Tell me how you really feel, cause I just wanna build with you. Black girl, tell me how you really feel. I just wanna keep it real with you. Yeah, I wanna live better, eat better. I wanna love better, sleep better. Yeah, I wanna feel so aligned. Sublime. Sublime. I wanna live better, eat better. Sublime. One time for elevated rhymes, 2 times for showmanship, 3 times for black hands and land ownership. Revolution I bring to you, where the ring bling to you. Nisi blues on war tunes, singing to you. I am the rebel without a pause, no applause. Trust me, I am Chuck D, getting mine off. Many fools, they clock watching my moves, and I needed a reappraisal of flavor. Took some time off now. Back Jesus, black fetus, slumbering unborn. Ark of the covenant, curtain untorn. I'm the rose that etches prose in Rosetta Stone. Still yelling it through a megaphone. Always repping, baby, forever home. I ain't the pot calling the kettle black. I am the flame keeping the kettle warm. I'm the blame for the renaissance that's cold. I write and recite it with down feathers on. I love you, and write and recite it with down feathers on. That mean that shit cold. And I'm the coldest. Listen, this the message right here. Black boy, tell me how you really feel, cause I just wanna build with you. Black girl, tell me how you really feel. I wanna keep it real with you. I wanna live better, eat better. I wanna love better, sleep better. Yeah, I wanna feel so aligned. Sublime. Y'all give a round of applause to this band right now. When they tell me they wanna feel the chords a little more.
What's up, family? Please, somebody, anybody, put a thumbs up in the chat if you can hear me. Make sure everything is plugged in properly. Paul, what's going on, brother? Mr. Wrench Turner in the building, what's going on, boss? We got Mr. Albert Choice. Greetings, greetings, greetings. Noah, shout out to you, man. Hope you guys are doing well. Tonight's stream is a bit impromptu. You know, I'll be posting stuff on Instagram from time to time, and a lovely young lady reached out. Well, she didn't reach out. I reached out to her because she commented on a clip that I'm actually about to play, and I brought up the idea of us having a more in-depth dialogue about, you know, not just the clip, but also her position when it, you know, as it relates to what the clip was about. So the clip was actually created by a good brother on TikTok. I think his name is ENT Kingpin. Shout out to that brother. He juxtaposed parts of my conversation with Bam when I was talking about how women only want good men after they're tired of the fuckboys, with a young lady who went viral recently for saying that she no longer has the energy to date black men, that black men are broke. That's, you know, the things that we hear a lot. So, like I said, I'm gonna play that clip, and then I'll talk about our guests' comment, and then we're gonna bring her up, and then we're gonna have a dialogue. I'm excited about this. But as far as housekeeping, if you guys haven't already, we are 24 days away from the 100 in Atlanta. So if you are interested in attending this event, please go ahead and get your ticket. I'll probably be closing it out soon, just so I can secure the people who are serious about coming, and, you know, we can kind of cater a more intimate experience for the attendees. So yeah, please go ahead and get your ticket. Either scan that QR code or go to the About page, and there's a link to the tickets there as well. Without further ado, let me play. Oh yeah, also housekeeping. I've been posting videos, but they're not performing. So I need y'all to kind of get in the habit of checking the channel. For whatever reason, YouTube doesn't want us to be great. But I interviewed Nathan Daly a while back. He and I did like a Joe Rogan style podcast about policing and police reform. I posted a part of that yesterday or 2 days ago, and then the rest of it, like the full conversation, is premiering tomorrow. So make sure you tune in for that. It was a really good, in-depth, really fascinating conversation. A lot of my qualms and frustrations with police, I kind of brought it up to him, and he did a pretty good job addressing some of the, I guess, logical gaps in the perspective of a civilian when it comes to law enforcement, and also some ways that we can begin to change things instead of just complaining about it. So this type of content is what's going to matter 10 years from now, not necessarily the men and women bashing stuff. So also the Christian by Default series, parts of that is up. I posted another part, or the last part of the conversation I had with the young ladies at the hair store. So like I said, navigate to the channel, click that video page. The new stuff is up, but people aren't seeing it. They're not being notified. So we have to kind of do the grassroots thing. But again, shout out to y'all for being here. Like I know it's impromptu, but the fact that 25 people have pulled up means a lot. Appreciate you guys. So yeah, like I said, let me pull up the clip in question. So this young lady in the clip, her name is Michaela Elise, I believe. Hope I'm not butchering that. But she went viral recently. And like I said, a good brother on TikTok kind of combined her video with one of my interviews. So yeah, I'm going to play that and we'll talk about it. And also we're going to bring up the young lady who commented that, piqued my curiosity. So yeah, let me stop talking and play. Okay.
I am so effing tired of the amount of emotional labor that comes with dating black men.
And you'll see women who have ran through the Pookies and the Ray Rays, and they say, I'm tired.
I am so tired of the lack of commitment, the lack of support, the lack of encouragement, the lack of money.
And they say, I'm tired. All these men are dusty. Black men are dusty.
My interest in dating another black man is like 1% at this point.
And then they end up with a nerdy white dude. And what's interesting about that is these same women, when they were younger, more desirable, overlooked nerdy black men.
They want us to be ride or dies until they get their shit together, and then they don't want to support us in return. They don't want to commit to us. They don't want to marry us, but then they want all the benefits of being a husband without actually proposing to us.
So you're saying to us, these attributes that I'm going to value in Billy, I don't value those in you. And then when I go to Billy, I'm going to claim that you guys are these things. When in black men, you didn't nurture those attributes. You encourage us to be emotionless.
I need someone who's intentional. And I'm really aware that I'm going to get a lot of hate for this, but.
All right. So hopefully I can get a hold of this young lady sometime in the near future so we can have a more in-depth conversation. Because I think there are layers to what she's saying, especially her situation being mixed, right? Because I've seen clips of her talking about the dark side of being a mixed kid, and how whether or not the white side of your family embraces you, whether or not the black side of your family embraces you, some of those challenges, and I'm sure it informs her disposition towards black men as well. So, but anyway, our guest tonight, Elsie, she commented, and let me see, let me pull it back up. So, boom, all right, that's better. So she commented and she said, I wonder why the nerds didn't date other nerds. I was very much overlooked in high school and college. And add being an immigrant to the equation made it very challenging. Myself and other nerdy girls were overlooked. I don't hear anyone talk about the girl nerds being overlooked. Instead, you talk about the analogy of the Cam Newton career versus Tom Brady career. In my experience, guys still want the popular girl. I think that's fair. I think that's fair, and that's why I reached out to her so we can have a more in-depth, robust conversation. You know, the nerdy girls, the nerdy guys, and if you look at our thumbnail tonight, it kind of speaks to that dynamic and some of the resentment that lingers in that dynamic. You know, the whole Mike Jones back then, you didn't want me, now I'm hot. You all on me. And a lot of men's experiences, the women that they wanted back in the day who didn't want them are now coming back. And it seems like in some women's experiences, the men that they wanted but didn't want them back in the day are now coming back. So, Elsie and I chopped it up a little bit, did like a pregame conversation, and I asked her to bring some questions. Obviously, I got the questions, and we're just going to organically just talk about this and see if we can reach some kind of mutual understanding. So this general kind of resentment that we see amongst men and women in our community in particular doesn't just persist. So I'm going to stop yapping. Without further ado, I bring to you Miss Elsie. Elsie, how you doing? No, your audio is coming in like super low.
Uh-oh. Oh, please.
That's okay.
What about now? It's at 100%.
That sounds better.
Okay, I'll try to speak up.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. Let's start with the post, with the TikTok video that you saw on the page. What were your thoughts of the video itself, and what would you say compelled you to comment what you did?
I did see the young lady's video floating around, and nothing really stood out to me from her point of view because I think that's just one of the things that keeps getting filtered through social media is a lot of the issues or grievances that Black women or women that are pure Black, so she's mixed, like you said, are having with Black men and also Black men speaking to their experiences and grievances as well. So what caught my attention was the narrative of the Black nerdy kid being overlooked and going through the Pookies and Ray Rays and then end up getting married to the nerdy white kid. And what got me was I don't know whose experience that is, but that is not my story. It is not my girlfriend's story. It's not none of my girlfriends who may appear nerdy, their stories. So it was just kind of like, I'm tired of hearing this narrative, especially when it comes to the save yourself, Black man, or the passport bros. I could be wrong, but it seems like a lot of them complain that they weren't Black enough or hood enough when they were in school, so they were overlooked. And now that they're clean cut and more desirable, they would rather just go overseas because when I was younger, you didn't want me. And it's like, well, did you look next to you in your science class or uh, your lab partner? That was me, perhaps, that maybe didn't look like the popular girl or wasn't as desirable as a popular girl. Did you look at her, or were you just looking at the popular girl and then having this narrative of all black girls are the same because, like, the illustration showed, um, the nerdy kid is wanting to talk to the popular girl, but she's with this thug, and then the nerdy girl is in the background, like, hello. So that resonated with me. Um, and then coming back later, like, hey, remember me when you shunned me? And it's like, you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't, it seems. So,
It sounds like there are a lot of parallels between some of men's experiences and some of women's experiences. In that, in that regard, what do you think is unique about women's experiences with, I think Kayla calls it not being select, right? Early enough, like in high school. What do you think is unique that men are missing about women who, as you put it, got overlooked for the cheerleader, the woman who was going after the thug?
I'm not sure if I can speak for everyone, but one of the questions I kept getting asked by my mom was if I was a lesbian. Because I didn't.
Oh, damn.
Exactly. That was
Yeah.
my reaction. Like, "Wait, what?" Because I didn't
Mm,
date, I didn't really go out. So, as a woman, I think women in general want to be chosen or want to feel like they are desired. And so there is this invisibility factor that we
mm,
tend to have to deal with. And it doesn't change when you go to college because you go from a smaller pool of high schoolers that you,
to a
well, I
larger.
went to three different high schools, but most people go to the same high school for the 4 years. You're with the same group of people typically, but now you're going to a bigger pond. So now it's almost like magnified times 10, where you hope that that high school syndrome of not being seen will go away. It doesn't seem to be
Mm.
the case.
What do you think, if you can consolidate like what men your age at the time were looking for, what would you say they were looking for? And what would you say they were looking for specifically that you didn't seem to have in their eyes?
So I went to the last high school I graduated from was majority white. It was up in the Northwest, Columbus, Ohio. And so there were maybe 10 of us total, both male and female black students. And it almost seems like a stereotype, but I don't recall any of the black men or black male students being nerdy. They were all athletes. All of
Mm,
them were with white girls.
mm. Do you
And
remember? I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
the only other black girl that I recall seeing, because I believe there was only two of us, two, maybe three. The only other black girl I remember seeing was overweight. So I do remember
Mm. Did you ever have an experience, whether in college or high school, with a male Elsie who overlooked you? So,
that.
like you said, the guy who was also in your chemistry class, or the guy who was also in AP or IB classes, who also overlooked you.
Yes.
Okay, talk about that, because I think that really gets to the core of the conversation. Talk about that.
So he wasn't, and mind you, the reason why he sticks out to me is because there are a lot of male versions of Elsie, but they're white. I didn't really see a lot.
Mm.
Yeah, I didn't see a lot of black kids, even at Ohio State University. I didn't see a lot of black kids, male black
Who
kids,
weren't athletes.
who weren't
Yeah.
athletes or were in my classes, because
Mm-hmm.
my plan that was provided to me by my father was medical school. So
Sure.
all of my classes were science or math.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't think there were any black nerdy men in any of my classes.
Mm.
If anything, I was the only one. Anyway, this kid, he was in my dorm. So the dorm I was living in was for science and engineering, and he was an
Mm.
engineer. We would see each other maybe doing laundry or during like the study hall that was all in the basement of the dorm, or if we had classes going the same direction. So we would talk and just kind of be cordial with each other.
Mm.
And I mean, I never really told him I was interested. I was completely oblivious to how to even approach that subject. But the next thing I know, he's dating someone else that looked the complete opposite of me.
Hmm. I mean, it's hard to say. Okay, so in a blue sky, in a dream world, how would that have played out? If you had it your way, how would you have liked to see that play out?
Um, so let me fast forward a little bit and then I'll answer your question. I I ran into him again, like, so we met freshman year. I didn't run into him till our junior or senior year at this point. And it was almost like we never lost touch. We started talking. It was like at 7-Eleven, and he brought up how he had um what was the word he used? I forget the word he used. He had a hard time expressing to me that he wanted to do something with me or like date me because I came
Okay.
off as if I was not interested. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
So
Okay.
I looked at him like, are you telling me you had a crush on me back then? And he said, yeah. I'm like, then what happened? I'm not going to say her name. I'm like, what happened with so and so? Because she was on my
Yeah.
floor. And the only reason why I even knew that they were
Kelsey. Yeah.
yeah, Kelsey couldn't stop talking about you.
Yeah.
And I was like, what?
Hmm.
Yeah. So
Whew.
it was
Okay.
almost like, were you expecting me to make the first move? And I think that speaks to a little bit of what I will say most women, because I'll put myself in a category of that. Most women find confidence attractive. And perhaps some of these Pookies, Ray Rays, thugs have a surplus of it, even if it is toxic. It's almost like it's oozing through their pores, and it appears, for example, myself being a nerdy person, nerdy kid, I was awkward. I thought I had a great personality, but I was definitely awkward. I couldn't really make eye contact with people. So he was
Yeah.
experiencing the same thing on the other spectrum where he was awkward. He was not confident because a Pookie or Ray Ray, if I was interested, would just step up to me, so to speak, versus him just
Yeah.
like, I don't know, should I, shouldn't I? So I never asked. I should have, but it didn't dawn on me. I didn't ask who made the first move between Kelsey and him.
Do you want my thoughts?
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's an
I
evil
think no
laugh.
no 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 I think what you just brought up is very 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 important because one of the things that I have been trying to find the best way to articulate is the fact that on the macro, women don't think they need to understand men. Women are kind of socialized to think men are simpletons. You feed them, you fuck them, and that's all, right? And if you have a pretty face, big titties, and a fat ass, you'll have success with men. That's really not the case. I bring that up because we talk a lot about the quote-unquote nerd guy and the quote-unquote Pookie and Ray Ray, but we don't actually talk about the pathology of either one of these guys. And to your point, I think it's easy to see Pookie's or Ray Ray's willingness to walk up to you and bombastically ask for your number as confidence, as opposed to the reality that he doesn't care about whether or not you reject him. He doesn't care about whether or not he's intruding on your day. He doesn't care about whatever social signals you're putting out, facial expressions, resting bitch face. He doesn't care about that because he cares about what he wants to get from you. Versus a more quote unquote nerdy, probably more thoughtful guy is gonna care that, hey, she doesn't look approachable. Hey, she looks like she's having a bad day. Hey, this might end bad for me if I was to attempt to do. So as a black man, I have to be aware of my social brand, right? So what I mean by that, like I live in a loft with a bunch of white people. I'm conscious to smile. I'm conscious to be friendly, to disarm them, because their immediate assumption is that I fit the description of whatever guy they saw on the news, because most white people don't grow up around black people. So again, I have to be aware as a black man of my social brand. Similarly, and also when it comes to black women, right? And similarly, I think black women need to also be aware of their social brand when it comes to black men. And some of the things you mentioned, being standoffish, being mean, being not fuck-withable, is some of the things that we see that are consistent with black women. And I even had to learn this myself after talking to some black women, being like, yo, I thought you were mean as shit, but you're actually a sweetheart. So if another guy ends up bypassing the opportunity with that woman because he went off of those cues, I can't really blame him. And I'll end it by saying that the piece that I think our women in particular would do well to understand about why some black men go to white women is that white women are socialized. And again, I want to preface it by saying I've never dated a white woman. I do not encourage black men to date white women. I'm not a fan of it. But just looking objectively, white women are socialized to be warm. Like their brand is inviting, their brand is engaging. So for black boy, whether high school, college, who's used to these supposedly or seemingly mean black women, to now be confronted with a Kelsey who's smiling, it's easy for that boy to fall in love, right? And it's not to say that he's a coward, and it's also not to say that Kelsey, quote unquote, shot her shot. But the reality is, what's his name? Matthew Hussey. Are you familiar with him? He calls it dropping the handkerchief. You heard of that concept? Mm-hmm. Basically, a woman's role is not to overtly approach a guy, but to make the way clear for him. And I think there are a lot of parallels, even when it comes to sex. Like, you're not the one penetrating him, you're the one making the way clear for him, literally and figuratively. And I think, unfortunately, compared to maybe some other demographic of women, our women struggle there a little bit, which is why it seems like the nerdy guys are going to the white women, or they're just fixated on the women who don't want them. Thoughts?
I can see that. Um, and I definitely got called out at the gym earlier this year about smiling more. And my response was, "Sir, it is 6 a.m. in the morning. I'm
Yeah.
about to deadlift this 225 for reps. I'm not trying to smile."
Yeah. Yeah.
So I laughed. And
Yeah.
his response was, "You immediately look like a different person." And I'm like, "But sir, it is 6 o'clock. How crazy would I look just smiling?" And he said, "I hear what you're saying, but I think you should think about how when you're walking around, when you're sitting during your breaks, what your face is saying." And I'm like, my face is probably saying I'm dying right now, but I'll listen. And I started consciously, because I still struggle with that, especially if I'm focused on something. I will consciously, I started consciously actually talking to people because I think that was something that was easier if I saw someone that I recognized waving and smiling versus just like, oh, I recognize them and not say anything, or like try to like have a smile on my face, so to speak.
Right.
So I
Right.
started um, just saying hello to some of the regulars that I would see at the gym. So I understand that. Here's my pushback.
Talk to me.
I have been called whitewashed and Oreo and Valley Girl, which I would say means I am very bubbly, according to one of my guy friends, because I end up having a conversation with him. Um, because he had invited me, I was working at one of the main grocery stores on campus, and he had invited me to like a party, which was very out of my comfort zone and very much like Elsie's rebelling because she's got a test to study for that's coming up in a week. And I usually study for my test a week in advance because trying to cram, no go. So usually my weekends are spent either volunteering at the medical center or studying. So when he invited me out, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, let's go out. I'm 21. I haven't had a drink yet. Let's do it. So he invited me to a party with a bunch of his friends that I had seen come back and forth at the grocery store just to like hang out with him. And I had an inkling that one of them specifically was interested, but never shot his shot. So I asked him about it. And his response was that I was a little bit too valley girl for them and didn't feel that I was black enough. And of course, my retort was, "I'm from the motherland. How black do you need me to be?"
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if the fear is we are not as warm as our white counterparts, but the the pushback I've been getting from one of my guy friends, he was in a relationship, so it wasn't going to be anything there. If I'm getting feedback from him that I'm very girly and I sound like
Yeah.
this and I have my white voice all the time versus just when I'm working, it's like, okay, so I don't know if I necessarily
So, was he a
felt,
similar archetype to the guy from college, or
no,
were they two different?
no. He
How
was
would you describe him versus the guy from college?
creative. Yeah, I would say
Okay.
he was a creative type. I forget what his major was. Maybe it was technology or something. I think he went to like ITT Tech or something. I'm not 100% sure. But he looked a lot like Ludacris because he had the big hair, same build and everything. But he wasn't really my type. So even if he
I,
was single, I probably wouldn't have
well,
gone
I think
forward with him.
what makes it what makes it complicated, and I think this is true for men seeking women as well. It's like you have to kind of decide on the type of person you want, right? And you have to then try to get granular with their disposition and outlook on the opposite sex. So meaning, in as much as I'm telling you that it would help you more easily attract the nerdy guy if you were more bubbly, more inviting, more or less standoffish. There are a lot of black men who were raised by single mothers who like masculine women. And they might not even be aware of it. They might not even be see it as a bad thing, but there are some black men, if I'm being completely honest, who, as much as they complain about the abrasiveness that we associate with black women, they like it. They like the non-bubbly disposition. They like the, oh, I gotta impress her disposition. So as the woman, you have to decide what kind of man do you want, because these are two different guys, right? And the guy who is going to go to the white woman, for instance, isn't necessarily the same guy who likes the abrasiveness that comes along with most black women. So I think these two stories are completely different.
Okay.
You have thoughts. I see your brain churning. Talk
Well,
to me.
I guess my first thought was it seems contradictory that the complaint is we're not soft and approachable and don't create the space for you to approach me. But then when I am the soft, bubbly type, that's not what you want. So it's kind of confusing.
Listen, it's frustrating even as a man, right? Because in the manosphere, one of the terms that's thrown out a lot is simp, right? And basically, it's just a guy who mortgages his self-respect to impress women, right? We see a lot of them. They call themselves male feminists and the whole nine, and it makes what people like me are trying to do difficult because they just pay lip service to whatever women want. So I say that to say there are men out there who are looking for all the negative things that we're complaining about. Somebody like me is speaking up against it because I don't think it's sustainable and I don't think it makes for good families or good children in the long term, especially as we compete with our white, Hispanic, Indian Asian counterparts. But some men are short-sighted. So some men are just focused on the sexual appeal of a woman who's unbothered, a woman who's our resting bitch face and the whole nine. So I think as much as the men who know better need to speak up against it, I think women also need to do their part in disincentivizing those types of men. Because the reality is a lot of those men are products of single mothers. A lot of those men are products of trauma. A lot of those men are products of neglect. So we have to have the level of discernment to distinguish between, okay, this guy is worth listening to and his preferences when it comes to women make sense and are sustainable long term. And this other guy who's asking me to be more abrasive and more harsh, does that make sense? Should I continue that cycle to my daughters and the whole nine? So like, we need to start making those distinctions.
Do you think that while we're in high school, and I mean both sexes here, while we're in
Yeah.
high school, that what we were attracted to or wanted in high school and college evolves when we get older?
I would say for most people, no,
Okay.
no,
So,
unfortunately.
and I'll have to agree only because my taste in high school and college hasn't changed.
Really? That's interesting.
Why do you say that?
No, finish your point, then I'll tell you.
Okay. Um, and the reason I ask is because if the complaint is nerdy kids were overlooked,
Hmm.
the nerdy kids are not meeting each other.
Hmm.
And then later on, seemingly, the nerdy girl is still not picked, then why why is it almost it feels like the responsibility of the nerdy girl to say, I'm here. You may not find me attractive, but I'm here. And then 10 years from now, I got more attractive. I still want you. Like, where's the self respect
Yeah.
in that manner? You understand what I'm saying? Because I'm going back to
Yeah.
that picture where you ignored me because I looked crazy, probably because you looked crazy too, which is perhaps why the popular girl went with the jock, because that's like
Sure.
their whatever, their group, their clique. So when now the popular girl fell off and you say, oh no, I am more high value now, I've cleaned up, I've glowed up, so now you're gonna look at me, am I supposed to just say, hey, come home? Like, and
You know,
that's assuming that even
yeah,
happens, because what I'm saying is it does not happen.
it doesn't happen. And to be fair, and I think that's why this medium of dialogue is much more productive because this thing is complicated. If I'm being honest, I wish there were easy answers. I wish it was clean cut, but the reality is it's complicated. Part of what makes it complicated, the way that men and women are evaluated is different. I think you spend more than 5 minutes outside, you'll see the way the curriculum for women is different than the curriculum for men. And with that being the case, it creates different expectations for men and women from men and women, and it also creates different deadlines, right? And what I mean is like a woman is at her most competitive from high school into college, a little bit after college. And even though she has glowed up, as you put it, that is still part of her evaluation from the perspective of men. Because, and a lot of people, when I say this, a lot of people are thinking, oh, I'm just talking about fertility or I'm just talking about like age. And here's an example of a 60-year-old woman who really looks good for her age. But what I'm also talking about, and something that men consider, is experience and baggage. There's something intoxicating from a male point of view of being a woman's introduction to something, right? Before, back in the day, it was like virginity. We wanted to take her virginity. And the younger she is, the more likely she's a virgin. But now it's more so like, I want to be the first guy who took her out of the country. I want to be the first guy she did this cool thing with. And also, I don't want to have to deal with whatever BS that she suffered in her last relationship. Now, when you consider a woman who is a lot younger, she might have one last relationship. When you consider a woman who's older, she has a lot of last relationships that now the man is expected to deal with whatever the fallout is. So a lot of men take that into account. So simply the fact that she glowed up does not absolve her from some of those other considerations. So he might position himself in a way where like he wants to have sex with her, But the same fervor and vigor that he would have pursued her back in college, back in high school, if she had that same glow up, is not the same, unfortunately. And I think there are different ways that manifests for men and for women. And I think part of the advantage, quote unquote, for men is, even when we look at the thumbnail, generally speaking, that nerdy kid in high school, in college, is still on an upward trajectory from a societal standpoint as how we evaluate potential suitors. He's still on an upward trajectory. Unfortunately, that nerdy girl who's now glowed up or whatever, she's either at her peak or on her way down. So from the perspective of the person seeking her out, it's not going to hit the same as it would have if she had got the physical together 5 years ago, 10 years ago, which is what, like I said, makes some of this kind of complicated.
Okay.
Give me the thoughts.
So, has it ever occurred to people that since some nerdy girls are not getting chosen, that they don't have relationships?
No.
Okay.
No. Did you expect me to say something different? No. And here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. Men are socialized, and I think part of this is actually good, and I'll try my best to explain it, but part of it is also bad. Men are socialized to be pessimistic. You know, in order to provide or protect worth a damn, you have to kind of think that nobody's coming to save you. It's in your hands. What am I going to do if the economy crashes? What am I going to do if somebody breaks into my house? Worst case scenario is kind of how men are wired. So with that being said, like, any man who's been outside just a little bit is going to assume if she tells you 2 guys, it's probably been 5. She tells you 5, it's probably been 7. Like, we have been, again, socialized to defer to the worst case scenario. So to your point, no, we're not gonna assume that you haven't had. We're gonna assume that you have, and am I willing to sign up for this? And whatever that algorithm is in our head, okay, she's this age, so that means she's probably boom, boom, boom. We have to kind of, within ourselves, answer the question, are we okay with taking that on? Because unfortunately, the reality is, like, even when you hear a lot of the social discourse around relationships, men are expected to do and be a lot for women. We're especially nowadays, we're expected to pay her bills. We're expected to rub her feet. We're expected to be her therapist, be the best sex she's ever had, be her protector, be her trainer, be all kinds of stuff. And I hear women say, well, I make good money too, and I bring stuff to the table. And because of a lot of the ways that we have been socialized to think of relationships, we do not consider your money our money. Partly because if we have children and you're on maternity leave, you're not going to be making any money. Partly because we hear women over and over and over and over again say that my money is my money, your money is our money. So men's default, again, going back to being pessimistic and worst case scenario oriented, our default is to say her money is inconsequential because it's not my money. Am I cool with signing up for everything else that comes along? Am I excited to wake up next to her every day? How does her disposition calm my spirit? Is she a safe place, a place that I'm excited to come home to every day when the world whoops my, especially as a black man? But again, I don't think women and not saying you specifically, but I think generally, I don't think women spend enough time considering the world from a man's perspective, especially when that man is evaluating a woman. Don't look so sad. Talk to me.
I'm not okay. I'm ruminating on things that you're saying.
Okay. Okay.
Um, well, let's backtrack for a minute. You were surprised when I said that my taste hasn't changed. Why did you smirk a little bit?
Because high school kids don't know shit. And a lot of, I know my taste has changed. A lot of the things that used to be super high on my list no longer are. And a lot of the things that were secondary are now primary, right? I was talking to one of my boys the other day. Like, in high school, a girl literally just had to be aesthetically pretty, right? I didn't care how her voice sounded. I didn't pay attention to her hygiene. I didn't care about her movement, her disposition, her energy. But now, you can be gorgeous, but if you don't have the disposition I like, if you don't move the way that I like, you don't smell the way that I like, you might as well be a 400-pound man. So for me, and I think it's a consequence of actually dealing with women, because a lot of boys are socialized to think women are sugar and spice and everything nice. And at some point as a man, you get to the point where you know that that's bullshit, and now you're left to actually deal with who women actually are, right? And that's when the things like how she moves, how she speaks, her voice, her intonation, that's when all that stuff starts to matter. On the flip side, when it comes to women, a lot of high school girls, the reason why you'll see Chris Brown posters and One Direction and all this is because they only naturally, I think, gravitate towards status, and also you can say aesthetics as well, but I would say more so status, right? Because I've heard a lot of women talk about ugly famous dudes as if they're handsome, but there is a status thing that I think comes naturally to women, and I hope that as women grow up and realize that some of that is bullshit, they start prioritizing not necessarily the high value attributes, but the high quality attributes. Is this man going to be a good grandfather to my grandchildren? High school girls aren't thinking like that. 20-year-old girls are not thinking like that. Yeah, so that's why I smirked.
So if high school girls, 20-year-old girls don't think like that, why is it the expectation that we should want to settle down at that age? If
I don't
taste,
think it's,
if
yeah.
which I'm thinking my criteria and taste has not changed. If the majority of their taste has evolved from aesthetics and status to the good man because of the character now, who's to say I get married at 22 because I was attracted to something specific that was not going to be sustainable, and then I grow apart from my partner because now I realize I don't know why I got married to you because you ain't it.
Right, right. And again, that goes back to, I say all the time, I don't have all the answers. I just have all the questions. That goes back to like this thing being messy and this thing being, there are no clean lines, right? There's a book by this guy named James Sexton. It's called If You're in My Office, It's Already Too Late. So James Sexton is a divorce attorney, or at least he was. He was like a 20-year divorce attorney. And he got a divorce. He got a divorce from a woman that, well, his ex-wife, the mother to his two sons. They got married in their 20s. I think he was 22, she was 21. And they got a divorce not because of cheating, from my understanding, not because of cheating or anything like massive like that, but more so like they weren't people who were compatible anymore, right? Because at 2021, we're thugging it. You know, most of the nitpicky stuff doesn't really matter, but like at 35 and things like that, like I like Zen, minimalistic aesthetics. You like shabby chic. So if you're the woman and you're decorating a shabby chic style, I don't like coming home to you because I would rather my place look more clean and zen. You know, I'm a lawyer. He's a lawyer, obviously, and he was like, you know, the worst time to try to talk to me is the morning before a case. The best time to try to talk to me is in the evening after I've done jujitsu and I've showered and I'm zen. For her, it was opposite. So you can only imagine that there would be natural clashes. And I think there was a conversation there about the efficacy of the traditional paradigm of marriage into the future as we feel like we have more options. But the reality is who you married at 20 is not going to be who you divorced at 30 or 40, right? And again, that's what makes it complicated. I think to your first question, part of the reason that the pressure is put on women to get married in their 20s is because purely based on that criteria that we have acknowledged that society uses to evaluate men and society uses to evaluate women, a woman has her leverage in her 20s because that's when she's her most desirable, right? A man is still gaining his leverage, so it would be, and again, this is the argument, it would be in a woman's best interest to secure that max NBA contract in her prime. It would be LeBron James's best interest to secure that NBA max contract in his prime, not when he's a vet, not when he's about to retire. And from a societal standpoint, a woman's prime is those 20s, and the max contract is a man saying, "I want to protect and provide for you until we die."
How does that work exactly if the woman is waiting to be chosen? It's not like we can stop time. We're still getting old.
Again, that's what makes it complicated. That's what makes it complicated. I think, and you know, to be fair, that's why, although some people dismiss men and women, and I've been guilty of this on some occasions, dismiss men and women who end up with white people. I think it would help us as a community if we approach that with curiosity. I would say especially for men, only because women don't, on average, don't struggle with attraction the way that men do. Men on average don't struggle with retention the way that women do. So it seems like a man moving up in social status means that he becomes more attractive to more women. A woman becoming more attractive to more men isn't necessarily an indication of her social status as her ability to secure and retain a highly sought after man, right? And I think the where a lot of women are going wrong is I think they're playing the attraction game instead of the retention game. They're playing the attention game instead of the retention game. And I think that's why so many of them are losing, because gravity and Mother Nature are coming whether you like it or not. So if you're not focused on identifying the type of man that you would be compatible with and identifying the type of woman who would be attractive to him, right? Because that's going to be easier for you to do than a man. It makes things harder in the long term. Shout out to Rich Turner. He says, "Don't wait, drop the handkerchief." Drop the handkerchief, ladies. I'll be trying to tell y'all, drop the handkerchief. And to be fair to women, I think Disney and our mothers did us a disservice, and Hollywood generally did us a disservice because it painted this picture that you don't have to do anything, and that a man is gonna seek you out of your bedroom, even though you don't go out. He's just gonna come find you. He's gonna come find you where you are if he's the right man. And the reality is not that, right? The reality is it's gonna take some proactivity on your part. It's gonna take some self-awareness and the willingness to change some aspects of yourself that you might have grown accustomed to. And that's true for a lot of women when it comes to the resting bitch face and the whole nine. But again, it's about being aware of and humble enough to say that I want this thing and I have to do what's necessary to get this thing. Drop the handkerchief. Ranch, I'm gonna need you to record an audio, so I'm gonna add it to the little sound bar and just drop the handkerchief. Drop the handkerchief.
Okay, so are you saying that a lot of women are spending too much time playing the attraction game when it comes to the amount of money they spend on like their outer appearance, maybe cosmetic surgery and clothing, versus spending time and money on working on their internal when it comes to being able to know what is necessary to retain a relationship? Did I catch that right?
Yes, and to take it a step further, I think too many women are unwilling to divorce themselves of their 16-year-old desires. So women 10 years later are still trying to become attractive for Chris Brown.
Ugh.
Even though Chris Brown would not be a good husband to you,
Okay.
right? And so it's, okay, you don't have to spend as, because again, like the school teacher who doesn't make that much money, doesn't have a quote unquote high social status, and is not looking for a woman with BBL, he's going to be the best man for you.
The school
But
teacher,
unfortunately, say that again?
what if the school teacher doesn't want me?
Yes. But I think big picture, unfortunately, a lot of women are socialized to overlook that type of man. So all the preparation is being done for a man that either you don't qualify for or a man that you wouldn't be compatible with long term. So let's say you don't qualify for the guy, you'll never get him. At best, you'll get into his section. At best, he'll give you some dick. Let's say you do qualify for him, but you guys aren't compatible long term. You might even get a ring, you might even get a relationship, but it won't work out. But again, unless that woman is spending as much time doing the internal work to actually identify that, oh no, what I actually need is a school teacher. What I actually need is a man who doesn't have the social status, who isn't sought out by a bunch of women. And I think a lot of women would be surprised as to the number of men they even notice. I'll be honest with you, Elsie. From these interviews that I've been doing, you would be surprised when women are describing men to me and a lot of their grievances with men, because I know a lot of guys. Between you and me, they're only describing 5% of men. But most women are not socialized to even see 95% of men. Maybe not, let's say 80%, just to be safe. So when I hear most women, and I'm not saying this is the case for you, but when I hear most women say that they're not attracting guys, and then especially if I see them, I'm like, either you're not leaving the house or you're only focusing on 5-10% of men. Because he wants you, but he's not tall enough. He wants you, but his beard don't connect. He wants you, but he doesn't make enough money. He wants you, but he doesn't have social status. A lot of women are social, especially, this goes back to the high school thing. A lot of high school women's girls' dream is the super attractive, high status, high value guy who is wanted by all the women, but only wants me. All the women are throwing vagina at him, but he only wants mine. Right. It's like, it's oxymoronic, right? Like Tupac with a PhD, like we talked about the other day. Most women aren't socialized to stop and say, number one, is that even gonna work? And number two, does Tupac with a PhD even want me? Right? So my whole message has been, when you do that reflection and honest self-assessment, more men will appear to you that you might have not even been able to see before. That were always there. They were just wallpaper than most women realize.
So I'm going to push back again a little bit.
Push. That's why we're here.
And I think I mentioned this. It seems even the school teacher or the post office worker or the cop, they're looking for the popular girl, because I've dated all of them. Mm-hmm. I either got ghosted or discarded. Mm-hmm. So I've dated engineers that discarded me. I've dated post office workers that ghosted me. I've dated a school teacher, or even a youth group leader. I think you're giving some of those men more benefit of the doubt than you realize, because I still think they're stuck in the aesthetics of, I didn't get what I wanted in high school, so that's what I want now.
Sure. So to clarify, when I said school teacher, I didn't literally mean school teacher. I just meant when women idealize their perfect guy, they're not thinking of school teacher, they're thinking doctor, lawyer, engineer, right? Okay. So my point was just to consider the people who might not jump off the page immediately. With that being said, like, dudes and the dudes who are watching this, who've actually been outside, who've been with women, who've associated with women, one of the things that we learn is that some of the worst women are nurses. Some of the worst women are lawyers. Some of the worst. So is that to say that nurses are bad people? No. Is that to say lawyers are bad people? No. But we start to find certain consistencies. I say all that to say, one of two things is either happening. Either, and I have to be brutally honest with you, either there's some aspect of you, kind of like you were telling me the other day, what's the common denominator? Either there's some aspect of you that you might have a blind spot to that's running these men off. Because we can either sit here and assume all those guys are assholes and jackasses and they don't care, they don't love their mothers, or we can assume that maybe one or two or three of them were actually good dudes. What is it about me that ran them off? Either that, or going back to you saying that your taste hasn't changed since high school, there might still be immature aspects of your taste that you are attached to. And there might be some consistent trait in these men that you continuously seek out. Because one of the things I've learned is I don't know if it's our brain or our psyche. It likes to replay the game. It's kind of like you're playing a video game and you lose, you start it over. It likes to replay the game to prove to ourselves that we can beat it. And that's why you'll see some women or some men date the same person 50 times or have the same situation. Or she was abused by 8 of her boyfriends. He was smacked in the face by 7 of his girlfriends. And then you realize that, oh, he is trying to subconsciously conquer this thing. Maybe his mom was abusive. So he's going to subconsciously seek out abusive women and think to himself that at some point I'll figure out the way to hack this. And like I said, in my experience, it tends to be one of those two things. Either you're trying to prove something to yourself, or there's something about yourself that you might have a blind spot to that's running these guys away once they learn what that is. Is there one that you're leaning towards?
I've gotten feedback for a couple that I can point out. And it's usually guys in the description of too conservative.
Okay, let's talk about it. Okay, let's talk about it.
What do you want me to say? I've been told I'm too conservative.
What do you? Okay, so 2 questions. What do you think? What does it mean to you? Like when you heard it, how did you understand it? And then the second question is, what do you think it means to them? Because you guys might understand it differently. So what does it mean to you, first of all?
I asked one person because it kept coming up, and I was curious what he meant by it. He said that to preface this, I live in Atlanta for people in the chat. So yeah. I don't know if that helps. So one of the things,
doesn't, but yeah, it doesn't help dating, but yeah, go ahead.
Well, he was looking.
We'll get to Atlanta.
Well, he was looking for, and this was an engineer. Mm-hmm. He was looking for a sexually promiscuous bisexual woman that he would be able to have threesomes with. And I said, "Thank you for telling me, but that's not me.
It's not my ministry. Yeah.
It's not my journey, nor is it my ministry." And before he said that, we started talking about dress code for some reason. And I made a comment about certain outfits that I would be caught dead in outside, but I would be willing to play around with maybe costumes inside with my partner. And he kept looking at me crazy, like, why not? Why wouldn't you wear that outside? I'm like, wait, I look like a cheap hooker? What's going on here? So eventually it came to, he was looking for sexually promiscuous, and that fell under the umbrella of being able to wear whatever outside, even if I was with or without him. That was really confusing.
How did that relationship even manifest?
It wasn't even a relationship. It was the second date.
No, but what made you say yes to the first one, let alone the second one? Like, in hindsight, were there any signs that this dude was looking for something? Like, were you just shocked when he brought that up?
I was definitely shocked. So I didn't think he was interested at all. At all. So when he followed up to talk to me, and I even expressed that to him, I was like, I didn't even think you were interested. And he said, why would you say that? And I said, well, no. So, and I think the first date went well, probably because I may have filled a role or a void for him that he could talk to someone about losing his father, like not even a week prior. So the date went fine. But what I also noticed, what made me feel like maybe he wasn't interested, was while we were waiting for our table, he kept inching back. I'll get closer, dropping the handkerchief, and you keep inching back. So after the second time, I thought, okay, maybe stop. And I didn't get any like I didn't get the energy that he was really interested. So I brought that up to him when he wanted to meet up again. And I was like, I'm surprised to hear from you. I didn't think you were at all interested to like even continue getting to
He
know each
wasn't.
other.
He
And
wasn't.
he
He wasn't.
claims
He lied.
that oh, I'll tell you what he says and then you can tell
Okay.
me. Okay. He claimed that being that he is 6'4", he is very aware of his size. He used to be in the military. So not only is he tall, but he's also bigger. He's aware, like kind of like what you said, of your size and being a black man, what that may look like in terms of being a little bit overpowering. So he was trying to give me space so I didn't feel threatened. And I said, I kept inching
Cap.
forward, sir.
Cap. That's a god. Round of applause for that young man, because that is good. I have lied in my life. I ain't never lied like that. That is good. So if Beyonce was inching forward, he would have backed up because his side. That's some bull shiggity. So okay, so let me ask you. Let me ask you this. What in hindsight, what has been more common? Men that it was clear that they wanted you, or men that it was unclear that they liked you? What would you say has been more consistent?
Ooh, boy. Men who wanted me for sex only
Okay, let's unpack that. Why?
because of my age.
Say more. Say more.
Um, a few of the people who use the word conservative or uptight were upset that I wasn't looking for a casual encounter. And so they will respond in a negative way. And it's usually women your age usually just want to, excuse my language, fuck around and have a good time. And I'm like, well, go find one of them. I mean, what about me? And I even asked, I'm like, what about me gave you the impression that that's what I was looking for? Like, I don't want to say you can tell if a girl or a guy is just looking for an F buddy, but I feel like there are certain women that you can be like, okay, no, she's looking for something different. Well, one of the guys actually came clean and said that, which makes sense. One of the guys said that the kind of women that he's attracted to only sees him as the kind of guy that should be in relationships. So I was like, huh?
Yeah, I've gotten that too. Yeah, that's real.
He
That's
said
real.
typically women who just want to have casual sex are looking for like the prototypical Adonis looking, sculpted, tall, chiseled, good looking man. And he may, since he's an average guy, he can't have access to those type of women that he's typically attracted to. So even though my requirement was completely opposite of what he's looking for, he was hoping to change my mind. And again, because I'm in my late 30s, I should be okay with it.
So, shout out to Rich Turner real quick. I saw that the brother he gifted 5 memberships. Shout out to you, my brother. I'm gonna drop one of Clues bombs for you. Appreciate you. So, how would you respond to the good brother's comment? He says her man is somewhere in Mississippi or Alabama, a good old salt of the earth, God-fearing, blue-collar conservative brother who pronounces street as screets and goes to rodeos on weekends. How do you respond to that?
Um, I think it's mm, it falls in line with what you said about what I'm looking for not being in Atlanta. However, street, screet, no. If like something that no,
Yeah.
something that hasn't changed from high school, college is someone that is unable to speak eloquently. If you like conversate, that grinds my gears so much. So that's very unattractive to me. Do I look? Am I looking for someone more wholesome? Sure, but I don't want anyone in the rodeo or speaking that way.
You know, we when we talked yesterday, we touched on Kevin Samuels just a little bit. I think part of the reason Kevin resonated with so many men is because I think baseline, a lot of our women have been socialized to view black men with a level of contempt. And that's just baseline. And that extends to even the black men like myself who are more articulate than the average bear, whatever that means. I understand that there are brothers who are far more intelligent than me who can't speak as well as I do. I understand that just because somebody is articulate and eloquent and they use their prepositional phrases doesn't necessarily speak to their character. It doesn't necessarily speak to their moral compass. But unfortunately, I think what's happened in our community more specifically, and I can give other examples with other things, but when it comes to our women, I think our women are unfortunately prioritizing what things look like versus what things are. So I think when it comes to career and stuff, for instance, a lot of women think that just because a man makes a lot of money means he's good with money.
Oh, I know better than that.
A lot of women think just because a man is articulate means he's intelligent and things like that. And I bring that up not to say that you should abandon some of your wants, but I would encourage women to reevaluate some of their wants, right? Because unfortunately, just like I said, some of the worst people, some of the worst women you'll meet are nurses. Some of the worst men you'll meet are lawyers. Like, lawyers are, I took a class in college called Legal Environment Men of Business. And the guy who taught the class was a lawyer. And basically, he talked about the reason why lawyers and business people don't get along. And literally, we spent the whole day talking about the process of becoming a lawyer and how that makes you jaded to humanity. Like, to be a successful lawyer, you have to have like a touch of narcissism, sociopathy even. And then we wonder why people bring that into their relationships and they're not successful. So I don't know if women generally, I'm not saying this is the case with you, have considered that some of the shiny things that I'm attracted to, I've been socialized to be attracted to, might not be good for me. But some of the more dull things, some of the more like streets, rodeo men, might actually be what's good for me. But if I instinctively dismiss them, not just them, but those things, I'm missing out on a world of experiences and a world of very positive things that might be meant for me, but I'm focused more on aesthetics and I'm focused more on my girlfriends being jealous or the pictures we can take, especially as Africans, right? Like, we focus a lot on what kind of wedding is he gonna throw me? How jealous can we make the people back home? So he has to be doctor, lawyer, engineer to be able to keep up with that. And then you see these people, and I'm sure you've seen this too. I've definitely seen it. The wife is a lawyer, the husband's a doctor. They look great outside, but they are miserable. They hate their jobs and they hate each other. But they put together that great facade to make the people back home jealous, make their parents, quote unquote, proud. And they die prematurely, or they just, live out the rest of their days miserably because they were so preoccupied with not being happy, but looking happy. And I think, unfortunately, that's what's hurting a lot of our women. And they spend more time talking about, well, black men need to step their game up to meet us where we are, as opposed to considering the fact that the man who's actually better for you is not the guy who looks like his game is stepped up. I know brothers they make $40,000 a year, but they have more money saved up than that lawyer who makes $300,000 a year, but is also $500,000 in debt. But we don't talk about these things with sophistication because we're so fixated on the aesthetic. And to be fair, I think women more so than men.
And that's fair, because I think biologically there's something to be said about women being more attracted to men whom they can look up to, not just figuratively with height, but that they can learn from. And maybe that's why there's such a disconnect as to me, woman, makes 100,000, you, man, better make that much or more so I can look up to you. I think that's where a lot of the disconnect is. Whereas I know that you making that kind of money doesn't make you a good steward of your money. So I'm well aware of that. 100%. Well aware of that. I wonder why. Well, no, I wonder why, though, the description that was it Warren just had?
Rance Turner. Yeah.
Was that specifically what? I'm curious if you can expand as to why that was who would be best for me. Why Mississippi or Alabama? As I lived in Alabama for a year and a half when I first moved to the States, and it was horrendous the way we were treated. And Mississippi, I've never been, but that just seems very specific versus saying somewhere like the Carolinas or anywhere else.
Right. And to be fair, I think that's what he meant. I don't necessarily think he was talking about Mississippi or Alabama or Texas or any other, Oklahoma. I think, unfortunately, as men, even going back to Kevin Samuels, the clip that launched him into the stratosphere was the Average at Best clip. I'm sure you've seen it. It was all over the news and shit like that. And it, unfortunately, in my opinion, I think it went viral for the wrong reasons. I think it went viral because a lot of men felt a sense of catharsis to see a man actually put a woman in her place publicly. I think the reason why it should have gone viral, the reason it stood out so much for me, is that she said during their conversation, I started making six figures. I've got a dog grooming business. And I'm finding that I cannot respect the men who make less than me. She even gave some examples. She said, some men are, they're trying to eat off of me. They want to know how we can get into business together and this, and that. But generally, to your point, women are socialized to look up to men. Even there's a biological incentive to look up to men. So it's hard for me to look up to somebody I make less than. I think the problem, though, is that position assumes that men and women's curriculum is the same. Like, what adds inches to your height as a man might take inches away from your height as a woman. And I think that's the piece that a lot of women are struggling to acknowledge, right? Like you'll see, and I've come across it even on the channel. Women, I've got my master's degree, Even on Kevin Samuel's channel, he used to talk about the PhD. I make 6 figures. I do this. I do that. And the reality is, if she was a man, that makes her a better man. But as a woman, that might actually take points away from you. So you have to be aware enough and humble enough to take away those points for yourself. And then consider the type of man that not only do you qualify for, but you're compatible with. And maybe it's a man who makes just as much money as you. Maybe it's a man who makes a little bit less. But the fact that a lot of women won't even make those considerations, I think is what's leading a lot of women to the outcomes that they're having, because they're not even willing to think about that. They just, he makes less than me, point blank, he's not up to my level, without considering the fact that, okay, I'm also 300 pounds. I'm also not the most attractive woman in the world. I also have a bad disposition. I also haven't fully therapized myself. So, and I'm also 50 years old. Like, so when you start deducting these things from the perspective of a man, you realize, okay, I need to humble myself. And I think it's that humility that moves us in the right direction to see the outcomes that we want to see. And again, I don't know specifically what that would mean for you. But I think generally the message here is just self-awareness from women's part, and also understanding their desirability from a male perspective. How would a man evaluate me? One of the things I ask some of my female guests, I say, if your son brought you home, would you be happy about it?
I mean, I don't have any kids, but if my son brought me home, and I don't want it to seem like I'm being pretentious here, but yeah, I would.
But again, we have to take everything into consideration. So, and when I say your son, it assumes that this is your pride and joy, and he's at the peak of his life. And when I say you, it also takes into consideration all the shortcomings that you have as well. For some women, that's weight. For some women, that's their mental disposition. For some women, that's age. Like you have, because if you're the mother, you would want your son to have the best, right? And these are considerations that I think it would help a lot of women to make proactively. And not to say, even with the average at best situation, it's not to say that you therefore don't qualify for those 6-figure men. It's not to say that you therefore don't qualify for those handsome men at the peak of their whatever, but it's to say that you might have to do a little bit more work. You might have to compete in a different way than, for instance, UFC. I think it's a beautiful analogy. If I'm a wrestler and I'm fighting somebody who was a Golden Gloves boxer who's now doing UFC, the first thing I want to do in the fight is take him to the ground. I'm not standing up with him, because if I stand up with him, I'm going to lose. The metaphor here is, unfortunately, I think a lot of women who might not be, whether gifted physically or gifted age-wise or gifted weight-wise or gifted disposition-wise, are trying to stand up with 20-year-old valley girls in the peak of their life, and win purely off of who's the most attractive, or I see a lot of our women in particular, they're competing on who's the most sexually enticing or sexually appealing. And it's like it's a losing game. But like you'll see Maggie, the substitute teacher, she said it best. She was like, a lot of older men, they give young men advice because they see themselves in young men, but older women compete with younger women because they see themselves as younger women, right? So are you competing on looks, or are you competing on cooking skill? You can beat that 20-year-old with cooking skill. You could beat that 20-year-old with knowing how a man thinks and being his peace and being all the things that the 20-year-old doesn't have to care about because she's a supermodel, whatever the case may be. And it only takes, again, that reflection, that humility to really be able to compete. But unfortunately, it seems like a lot of our women aren't willing to like take that L, and then start moving in the direction that could actually get the outcomes that they want.
Okay.
Oh yeah, so Wrench, Wrench, shout out to Wrench, man, with the $100 super chat. Appreciate you, my brother. Dude is the GOAT. He says, it was tongue in cheek. What I meant, or what I mean is that the men that exude traditional values really aren't in large metro cities. Search blue collar black men on TikTok and read the women's comments. Black women are at car auctions and Home Depot having the time of their lives.
Oh
So
boy.
I mean, and that's the reality. Like I said, the bigger, larger kind of community conversation is that contempt, right? Like the average black woman thinks she's better than the average black man. We have to talk about that. We have to deal with that. She thinks she's smarter. She thinks she's more educated. She thinks she's more articulate. She thinks she's more reasonable. She thinks she's more hardworking, the whole nine. So the only way that he can be on my level is if he makes at least what I make, or he's got the education that I have, or he has something that's comparable, or he's just so far and ahead better than me. And even in those situations, a lot of black women still look at those men with contempt. Oh, you must like white women. Oh, you just one of them, right? So I think we solve this problem and we kind of bridge this gap with conversations like this, and also a great deal of humility from both sides. And in this case, the female delegation, to not just simply dismiss those blue collar, those streets men, because those streets men are some good ass men. They are some really good ass men. Talk to me.
Even though I may have seemed like I was dismissive to that idea, I'm dismissive because I've tried it all. And one of those guys who didn't necessarily speak eloquently and would use certain words that I would cringe over was one of the biggest disappointment of 20 what are we in 2023, 2022. So
Okay.
I don't know about all of that. Sparks Notes version. I had been taking breaks from dating when it seems like I'm getting the same kind of people. So I would take a break and do some introspection. Okay, what do they all have in common? Elsie,
Okay.
what is it that is causing me to encounter these men? Is it maybe because I am just looking in the wrong places? That's possible. So then I switched it up after I took 6 months off or so. And one of the seemingly wholesome men, very country, I think he's from Louisiana. Met him August of last year. And this might give a little bit more transparency as to me being conservative. My father passed away in November. So up until
Sorry to hear
then,
that.
thank you. So up until then, we hadn't been intimate. And a lot of our interactions and dates were at coffee shops, taco huts, like really casual encounters. And so when my father passed away, he would check in on me and see how I was doing. And I would tell him today's not a good day, X, Y, and Z. So when it happened 3 days in a row where he checked on me and I had the same response, he decided, well, I'm going to come see you because I'm worried about you. So my thought was, well, that was really nice of him. Like, that's what I need right now, someone that I can like lean on. I first said no, but he insisted. So I was like, all right. So he came over. So why would it be that within not even 2 weeks yet of my father passing away, that it was appropriate to try to have sex with me at that moment? that's a good guy? Sure.
Okay, let's break it down. Let's break it down. How long had you guys been in dialogue and communication?
August to September, we were
Okay.
very consistent of talking. September, he took a trip with like a traveling group. Then when he came back, October, we kind of continued. And a lot of this dialogue was trying to figure out if we were compatible, not just in terms of moral, but lifestyle and what we were looking for. We're a year apart and both didn't have kids. So it was very casual in terms of no big dates, like taking me to any fancy dates or anything. It was just more of let's get to know each other to make sure that this is something we want to do exclusively. So then we picked back up in October, and then November 9th was when my father passed. So between mid August to November, we only had like 2 weeks where we didn't really talk much because he was out of the country.
So okay, first and foremost, your dad passing had nothing to do with him wanting to have sex with you. He was going to try to have sex with you regardless.
Was that the moment that he should be trying?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. But I just want to lay the foundation is like, as a man, he wants to have sex with you. I think it's important that women go in with that understanding. Maybe, and I'm not saying this is right. I'm just trying to reverse engineer his thinking. Maybe he thought his chances were higher since you were in an emotional state. That's been a lot of men's experience. So even though he shouldn't have, maybe that's why he tried it. I guess my question to you would be like, do you have those like 30-day, 60-day, 90-day rules? Or typically, how do you view taking a relationship from platonic to sexual? Like how long is that time period for you typically, and what typically do you need to see or needs to happen before you make that leap?
So there's no time frame for me. It's more of comfortability. Do we like each other? Do we see each other being in a exclusive relationship where it would turn into something more? That's kind of what I look for. But I also look for consistency in terms of showing interest. If I'm the only one reaching out, I'm going to wonder, am I the only one that's interested here? And there wasn't anything I could pinpoint one way or the other if he was just going with the flow, because in person, it would seem like he was really into it. But when we were just talking on the phone, it seemed like he was more very distracted. So it was kind of hard to determine where he was at unless we were in person. And I wasn't sure if the in-person thing was helpful because he is a visual person. I mean, he's a man. I get it. But no, I don't have a time frame. I need to know that you're interested beyond something that's just casual.
Did you communicate this to him prior to this, and what was his response?
He said he was at that place that he was looking to settle down as well. But I'm not going to just take that as you want to settle down with me.
Yeah.
I need to hear those words.
Yeah, I think again, like I said before, none of this is clean cut. None of this is simple. And I remember another clip of Kevin Samuels that went viral. He was talking to a woman. I think she was in her 40s, and she said that she was waiting until marriage. And she had already had like 3 kids, and he was like, "Man, you need to get that shit away. Ain't no nigga gonna wait with you until marriage." And I think it speaks to, I wouldn't be as brash as Kevin Samuels, but I think it speaks to the whole situation that you find yourself in is very unconventional. It's very non-traditional. And because of that, I think you're going to run into a lot of unconventional, non-traditional men who, at best, are going to be like men who were married previously and now they're trying to sow whatever royal oats they didn't get to sow because maybe they got married too early. So they're not going to be super enthusiastic about jumping back into it. Or you're going to run into the men who never wanted to get married or only wanted to get married at 45, which again is not going to be traditional. So to be a woman in a non traditional paradigm, upholding traditional boundaries is going to be very, very, very difficult. But again, I think it sounds to me that, because remember I asked you before, is it that you keep choosing the same guy, or that these guys have identified something in you, and each of these guys over time identify something in you that they don't like? I think now it seems to me that it's that you're choosing the same guy. Because you haven't given me an example of a guy who, like, yeah, he definitely liked me. Like, all the stories I'm hearing is, I don't know if he liked me, or he only liked me over the phone, or he only liked me in person. Do you have a story of a guy where, like, he was head over heels over me, he clearly liked me, but it didn't work out because,
Yeah, I have a couple of examples.
okay.
So it didn't work out with him because, and I knew this going into it, which I hate using this as an example. And this is when I took my first break. Actually, my second break. Um,
Okay.
uh, we dated for 7, 8 months, but I knew prior to us dating, he was fresh out of a 14-year marriage, like very fresh. So I looked at him like, bro, why out here dating folk?
Trying to fuck. He trying to get some pussy. That's what he trying to do.
Right.
Shit.
So I was
He
looking at
been
him
locked away for 14 years. Hell yeah, he trying to get some.
like,
Yeah.
goodness. But the reason why I even continued dating him was because I enjoyed the way he treated me, and I could tell he actually liked me. So it was, and I tell my friends and my family this all the time, like, the most unavailable man treated me the best. What the hell?
Of course he did. Of course he did.
So after things fizzled out with him, I took a break. The most recent guy that I could tell really liked me, I was not at all attracted to him.
What was wrong with him?
He carried a lot of feminine energy. I had to plan all the dates. I had to reach out to him and ask him when he wanted to hang out. When he would tell me, I miss you, I would say, oh, what are you going to do about it? Do you want to see me? So he was fishing for compliments and reassurance from me. Even the first time we met, and I should have seen that as something that was going to continue on, but I thought it was maybe him being nervous because why am I planning stuff continuously? Like the conversation went something like, do you have anything planned this weekend? And his response was, are you trying to see me or are you just making conversation? I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm making conversation. So then he tells me, and then he says, would you like to see me? I'm like, do you want to see me? What's happening here? So like, yeah, I like to see, I like to meet you in person. Like, what's going on? Like, would you like to? I thought like the
And
feeling.
this is in Atlanta.
Yeah. And I was like, I thought the feeling was mutual. And he said,
There you
yes.
go.
So finally, we planned something. But ever since then, he was following my lead. Mind you, he's 44 and had a 29-year-old son that just got married. And he had never been married before. So I'm like, what?
Damn.
What? Huh. But I
Yeah.
could not get past the feeling of me stepping in the shoes that I needed someone to fill in terms of leadership. I gave him a long time to see a full change.
Yeah, no,
Communi-
I would
and
have
I
I would have been out the
communicated.
first date. Yeah, I
Right,
would
and
have
I
been out the first date.
communicated.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
communicated, not just in voice notes, on in person, on the phone, and text message. And I was getting pretty bad advice. So I'll say that. I was getting pretty bad advice that he seemed like a good guy. I'm like, but I don't think he's my guy. Just because he's a good guy, two good people meeting doesn't necessarily mean they should be together.
Sure. So okay, blue sky. What outcome do you want? Because my next question is, what guy fits that outcome? Because it might not be the guy that you want.
Oh
Unfortunately.
boy. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm scared to answer. um,
These are the questions. And we haven't even got to your questions, so like
I
I'm excited
know.
to see your questions. This has been going good so far.
um, a confident gentleman.
No. Not the guy that you want. What outcome do you
What
want?
outcome? I would
Yes.
like to be remarried.
Okay. What timeline? Like I want to be remarried in 6 months, in a year, in 2 years.
Well, since I'm not dating anyone right now, I can't say 6 months.
Okay. So like a year, 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So with that being said, does your ideal guy already have kids? Does he want kids?
Ideal guy?
Yes.
Well, ideally, no kids. I understand
Okay.
at my age that, well, you said ideally. It's a preference
Yeah.
of mine, but
Yeah.
is it a need? No. A need for me is if you're gonna have kids, it can't be multiple baby mothers.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and tell you this. Like
oh jeez.
most black men at that age are either already gonna have kids or they're gonna want kids. So for the ones that want kids, it doesn't matter how perfect they are, it's not gonna work. For the ones that already have kids, there's that added layer of like the bureaucracy that they find themselves in with the kids' mothers, with the kids themselves, with the time split and all that good stuff. With that being said, like, where are you willing to make compromises? Like height, looks, religion, like where are the places that you're flexible on?
Um,
Salary?
well, I don't look at salary. I look at the person's character because I think that says a lot about how you steward the money you make. So that's never been on my list that you got to make X amount. Um, I just need you to have a job or a career.
Okay.
Um, I've been open to height, so I don't date specific heights all the time. Like my ex husband was,
How tall are you?
I'm 5'4".
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, my ex husband was 5'7". So I'm open to different heights.
Yeah.
What I've found is some, and this goes for taller men too. Some of the men who are smaller in stature um, lack the confidence that I would need them to have to lead me.
Say
I've
more
met
about that.
I've met some men who were very confident at 5'5", but they were toxic, and I could sniff that within like the first date. It's like, oh no, I cannot do this. But I met a guy. He said he was 5'6", so I made sure to wear flats. No, and we were also going to walk around at the belt line. So I wore
Mm,
flats for that reason too. I feel like he probably lied because I was looking
mm,
down at him. So that was kind of like a bad taste in my mouth that you lied about your height. Because if you're
yeah.
5'6", why am I looking down at you and I'm wearing flats? And then just his demeanor in general, it felt like I was talking to my little brother, and we're the same
Mm,
age. So, and I attributed that to him being a teacher and a coach. That maybe he was around, like he just is that kind of guy since he coached.
forever young. Yeah.
Yeah, teaches like middle school football. So I thought that might be it, but I don't want to, and I'm going to try to keep it PG. I don't want to have to be intoxicated to imagine you on top of me.
Sure, 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 sure. No, that listen, a lot of things that um, some guys have an issue with when it comes to women. I understand it. It just is what it is. Like that's the reality.
Yeah.
Women are biologically, in my understanding, predisposed to want a man who, in some way, shape, or form, she thinks is better than him. And it sounds like crass when I say it that way. But in order for you to follow somebody's leadership generally,
Yeah.
whether it's a literal somebody you look up to or somebody that you aspire to be more like,
Hmm.
the whole child rearing, childbirth process, it's still at the foundation of how we look at vetting people for relationship. And most women subconsciously think, I'm only going to risk my life to clone a man that I see as, I think the world needs more of him. Right? So it makes sense.
Yeah.
Before I put,
So I
before,
feel like I have a lot of things that I are maybe deal breakers for some women that I don't necessarily hold as a need. Salary, height, um, career. Um, I my non-negotiable is religion. My non-negotiable is having multiple baby mothers because, like you said, the politics of managing multiple homes. I know it's going to be even more time away from myself and my partner if he has more than one that he's going to have to split time with. So that would be my preference. Well, no, it's a standard. I don't want to have multiple mothers, and it seems like I either meet men who only have one mother, a big mother of their child, or six. Like what? Where's
there's
in
no in
between?
between, right? Once you pop out the second one, you might as well keep going, my boy. Yeah, I mean, it is, yeah, there's something, yeah.
No, I mean like six
Um,
big mothers,
that's
not six
another
kids.
conversation. That's
Right.
that's
So that's
another,
what I mean. Like it's either
yeah.
one baby mother or six back to
And
back.
again, like we said, you're in Atlanta. You're in literal Black Sodom and Gomorrah, to use a biblical reference. So you that in itself makes it 10 times more difficult for you. The competition is really stiff. The women outnumber the men, right? So women who have some of those attributes that men are looking for on their side, they're going to be at the forefront. So you have to make yourself additionally competitive. So what what I guess, okay, describe the guy who fits your criteria. Yeah, describe that guy, and then I have a follow-up question.
When you say describe, do you mean tangible or intangible?
Both. Like describe. Matter of fact, I want you to get granular. Describe what he does for a living. How old is he? How tall is he? Where does he
Okay,
go to church? Like,
if I do that, I think that like limits and makes me narrow-minded because I can tell
No,
you
no,
what
no.
to
I'm trying to define the bullseye.
okay.
And then from the bullseye we can extrapolate out like, okay, he's not exactly this, but he's close to it, so we can kind of, and then I have a follow-up.
So it's hard for me to say career. Can I give you the career I would prefer he didn't have versus the
Sure,
one he did have?
sure,
Okay.
sure, sure.
All right. So if I had to pick height, had to, at least 5'10". Um, I train at least 5 times a week. So someone that I can train with. No, I'm not prepping for a bodybuilding competition, nor do I require the guy I'm dating to do as well. But someone that enjoys lifting. If you don't enjoy lifting, something close to ensuring that your body is being kept up, especially if I'm going to be dating men in the older range. Speaking of age, I would prefer 40 and up, 40 to 48. I don't necessarily want to go too high because I want to be able to grow with the person I'm with. And I want to also enjoy some intimacy with the guy I'm with because I know the older you get as a man, the less that's going to be frequent. Um, the kind of job I would prefer you don't have is anything in the entertainment industry, and that includes athlete, coach, music,
Well,
acting. Yeah,
he's not going to be an athlete at 40, but he might be a coach. He might be a former
definitely no
athlete.
coach.
Okay.
uh,
What's wrong with coaches?
I was married to someone that was very closely related to a coach. He was an athletic trainer. So I know the kind of time that takes away. And I'm still friendly with a lot of the coaches' wives, and I hear the horror stories and the lack of oneness with their spouse. So I don't want any of that.
Okay.
um, don't necessarily mind like the prestigious African required professions that your parents tell us to do, as far as doctor, lawyer,
Doctor, lawyer, engineer.
engineer, nurse. I don't mind it, but that's not like that's not something that's gonna sell me on you. Like, okay, great. You're smart. That's awesome. Um, religion, Christian, saved, that actually reads the Bible, doesn't use it as a weapon to manipulate, because there's a lot of that going on, which I think puts a bad um, paints a bad picture of people who are Christians. Um, someone that can pray for me, especially since I've lost both of my parents. That was another thing that I was considering with the guy that tried to have sex with me. It wasn't, yeah. Anyway, so that's also important to me. What else? When it comes to family, how close he is with his family, I don't necessarily think one is better than the other because there are certain families that, yeah, they're close knit, but there's a lot of toxicity there. Some are close knit because they actually genuinely love each other and like have that community, which is great. But if you don't have that, I'm not going to hold that against you because sometimes you do need to cut off certain family members. But I would like to know more about that and see how you are with um, reconciling that relationship.
Yeah.
What am I missing? I am very big on character. I am very big on making sure that you, as a man, actually like a woman. not just because you're attracted to them sexually, but because you actually like and value what a woman can bring to you versus what's going on in the world right
Sure.
now. I pay attention to how you treat other people who don't necessarily affect your bottom line. If it's service workers, people on the street. Speaking of street, I would like for you to know how to protect me. Like, don't let me walk on the outside of the crosswalk where I'm facing the oncoming traffic. Just little things like that. Chivalry is very important to me.
Okay, so this guy, he exists.
Yeah.
If I was interviewing him, describe, and I asked him the same question to describe his ideal woman, what do you think he would describe? Or who do you think he would describe?
Fit, feminine, and
Well, I mean, now you have to tell me what that means to you.
fit, feminine, and friendly.
Yeah.
What is
So I think fit is the easiest one. Like
yeah.
somebody whose their BMI makes sense and for
Mhm.
their height and all that good stuff. Feminine and friendly, I think, is what a lot of people have the hardest time with. So what does that mean to you?
I think friendly is just when someone tries to talk to you, you don't like sun them. Like, yes, how can I help you? Or just be willing to turn to them and be respectful. If like if they ask you a question that you don't necessarily know the answer to or feel offended by something, I don't think it's feminine to rebuttal with a snarky remark. Um, I think it's feminine and friendly just to say, excuse me, and remove yourself from the situation versus trying to assert whatever dominance you feel you have as a woman in that situation. So I think it's really the opposite or then the anti-masculine that we see a lot, like being easily offended. I don't think is feminine. Um, Being easily, I don't want to say triggered because that's different. Um, being on guard and not being able to relax, uh, because I think that's where a lot of people just are ready to fight at all times. Friendly means even as something as stupid as seeing that there's a spill on the floor at a grocery store and you don't want anyone to slip up and fall, so you alert someone, hey, can someone clean it up? I don't want anyone to get hurt, or like put a caution sign down. I used to work at a grocery store, so I look at stuff like that too. I know, very random. Friendly again, and this could be the African in me, I don't know, is opening the doors for your elders. I don't mind opening a door for someone that's older than me, or even getting up for someone, like if you're riding a train at the airport, getting up when you see someone older to sit down. I think that's friendly. Being um, approachable, smiling. I think there's just an air about someone that is friendly versus someone that is guarded and has the resting bitch face, so to speak. And
So
feminine, go
no,
ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think feminine is part of that being friendly as a woman.
Are there some challenges you think that this hypothetical guy would have with you?
Yes, sure. I'm not perfect.
What comes to mind? What are some things that come like are top of mind when it comes to that? Because he might be watching this. I mean, we got 89 people watching right now. It'll probably get 1,000 views in a day or two. So yeah, Her IG. I added her IG to the bottom of her name. So let's talk about it.
I just alluded to it not too long ago. I lost my father. Um, and the year before that, I lost my mom. And the year before that, I went through a divorce. So I've had to endure a lot of losses very quickly. And to add to it, I'm the oldest. So I don't have anyone to lean on. My sister leans on me. And now she's married, so she gets to lean on him. So I'm like, oh, thank God. I can like have some breathing room, but I don't have anyone to lean on. And so there may be a little bit of resistance when it comes to letting someone in initially because I want to feel safe. And I don't know if that's something that automatically happens just from the basic interaction with someone. I think that comes over time. Um, I have a tendency to, what's the word? I've become hypersensitive to certain things. So why do you laugh? Oh my God. What
No, I think we're getting to the core of some things, and
okay.
hypersensitivity is something that's come up before. But keep going. I'm
Okay.
sorry.
Okay. I am hypersensitive to not being seen or my point being dismissed when I express a concern or a feeling I have. Um, and I guess another possible, I don't know if it's a barrier, but I've heard it been brought up before, is culturally being Ghanaian. Yeah, I haven't been home in a while, but to the core, I'm still Ghanaian. I still speak the language. I still have a lot of the cultural aspects about me. My great aunt and uncle that live about an hour and a half from me are very, very Ghanaian. So when I go over for family dinners and they're grilling me, I could just imagine what that's going to look like for whomever I date who doesn't necessarily, who isn't already a Ghanaian or from from Africa.
Or
And
woke. Yeah.
well, I don't want to say woke because I feel like that comes with a negative connotation, so to speak. Um, and I think it's getting better now, but I think people are being a little bit more receptive and respectful of other cultures. But
Sure.
I don't know if that's something that's going to come up again. And that's also part of my hypersensitivity.
Okay. Okay. Before I read this super chat by Afro Disciple, I want you to answer the question. What do you think is your competitive advantage?
I'm fit, friendly, and feminine.
No, that's
No,
generic. Like, what
I
is
was
your like literal?
I know. Competitive advantage. I think in my age group, not having children.
Give me one more thing, because that's depends on who you ask. Give me one more thing.
Okay,
Do you have siblings?
I do. I'm the
How
oldest.
many?
So total, I have three siblings. I met my step siblings about 8 years ago. So um, I am definitely wise beyond my years, so to speak. But I also got parentified very early on. I don't know if that's an advantage, but I would say my cooking.
Okay. Okay. Now we're talking. Okay. Okay.
My
And
cooking.
I only bring that up because, like, when you said, or well, I only asked you for a different one because to some men that might actually be a
Turn off?
a cause for apprehension.
May I ask why?
I think maybe some men might assume that you are selfish or that you might, and that's why I asked if you had siblings. Like, some women have this princess syndrome of like the world revolves around me and everybody and everything exists to serve me. And you see that sometimes with women who don't have kids. So I that's why I wanted to clear up. Are you like a princess? Or is it just it didn't line up? Maybe some decisions were made because, but I think any reasonable guy is going to be curious.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I am definitely not a princess. I think, and I've heard this from some of my coworkers
Mm-hmm.
who are also Ghanaian, who are also the oldest, also the girl. And we were having a conversation because she had just moved to Atlanta from New Jersey, and she has three brothers. And she was telling me about how her parents kept like talking about how her and her partner weren't married yet, how they were like, why was it going to take so long, X, Y, and Z, because they were looking for grandkids. And I asked her, does she want any? And she said, honestly, I'm tired. I've been a parent since I was 5. I'm like, girl, I've been a parent since I was 7.
I've heard that.
So,
Yeah.
like, no one really talks about the exhaustion that comes with not being able to be a kid. You were forced to be a parent very early on. So,
How would you respond to Afro Disciples' comment here? He says, what's sad is she's stunning and would be a lot of men's type, but they are invisible to her. Unless she's insane, it makes no sense that she's single. Let's focus on the you're stunning part. So shout out to Afro Disciple with the $4.99 super chat. He says, you look too good to be single, so something must be wrong with you. So what is wrong with you?
do you, and I will actually push back a little bit that
Okay.
because thank you for the compliment, because I look the way I look, the assumption
Yeah.
is I'm taken, so no one's approaching me. So I'm invisible to men who want me, but I'm also invisible, period, because I'm looked at like, oh, she's taken. And that conversation came up while I was at the gym with one of my new gym buddies. He was shocked. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
So do you think there are any things you can be doing to help mitigate some of that? Like we talked about earlier, smiling more, things like that. Is it? Because unfortunately, I mean, it's not fair, but unfortunately, you're going to have to do something different.
I did a lot of things different, and if anything, I think it hurt my confidence because I had been dropping handkerchiefs. No one is picking it up, but I don't know if the ones I'm dropping the handkerchiefs to are taking themselves. Because some guys may not be wearing their wedding rings if they're married. So I don't know. It's possible I'm dropping the handkerchiefs to people who are taken.
Let me read some of these super chats and then we'll transition to your questions for me. So Afro Disciple again with the $4.99. He says, men compromise far more than women. We won't sacrifice harmony and happiness for excitement. They will. All right. Oh, shout out to Wrench again. He says, "Don't wait. Drop the handkerchief." Shout out to Joel Sam. Just became a member. Welcome, brother. Shout out to Mr. Smith. He says, "Valley girl," in quotes, typically means you're bougie. Are you bougie?
When I say Valley Girl, I think like, oh my God, hi, because that's what I sounded like a lot in high school and college.
Yeah. So
No,
it didn't. People didn't feel like it was organic. I imagine.
they didn't feel like it was organic because I'm black.
I think that's part of it. To be honest with you, I
Because
think that's part of it.
my demeanor had never changed. Obviously, I just like exaggerated that, but like when you think of a Valley Girl from like Clueless, that's what I mean, not bougie.
Yeah. I mean, and to be fair, it's in some sense it's the same for black men, where like we have certain expectations of us, to be a bit more street, rugged, whatever. And it hurts some of our prospects, especially earlier in life. So, yeah, I'm sure a lot of guys can empathize. Maybe not with the Valley Girl side, but maybe the Oreo piece. Shout out to Ebert with the $20 super chat. He says, "Great stuff. Keep it up. Appreciate you, brother. Thank you." All right. Again, if y'all want to support the stream, please hit the Cash App. Also, the best way you can support is to get your ticket for the 100. The link is in the About page. So, Elsie, it's your turn. Talk to me. What are your questions, concerns? Maybe I can help clarify some aspects of black masculinity for you.
I am curious to know what kind of high schooler or college student you were. Like what bracket you put yourself in.
What group? In high school, I was a football player, but I didn't really do anything as far as like go to parties and things like that. But it was partly because I didn't really want to. And the other part was like a lot of my friends weren't at school. And a lot of them were older than me, so I ended up doing older people stuff early. Like I was in a strip club when I was 15. So I wasn't as impressed with a lot of the things that people were so flabbergasted by in high school or even in college. In college, I was really involved. Like I ran the NAACP. I started We Need to Talk. So a lot of people knew who I was, but I've always been a guy that the quote unquote popular kids knew who I was, but I didn't care about being one of them. In college, however, I think because of my status, I was considered a popular kid. But again, I was never somebody who sought out people. People kind of came to me.
So have you, from your vantage point, seen how maybe the nerdy black kid was overlooked in high school or college?
1,000%. For me, I think my challenge, maybe not in high school because I had gotten really good at blending in, but like elementary school, middle school, I was fresh off the boat. Like I came to this country when I was 8, so my accent was still pretty heavy. I didn't understand the slang. I didn't understand hip hop culture, so I wasn't desirable. But I also noticed like the type of people who got attention from the girls and the type of people who didn't. I think my only advantage is like I didn't, as much as maybe other guys, I didn't base my worth on my ability to pull women. So it didn't, I don't have the horror stories of like getting rejected because I didn't try, right? Like, but then in high school or in college, any girl that I wanted and I actually tried, I got them. But I also have the wherewithal and I guess the kind of self-awareness to know that if I had tried before I understood what was going on, I would have failed. I would have failed miserably. So I empathize with both sides, actually.
What kind of girls were the nerdy guys being rejected by?
I'm gonna talk about the nerdy black guys. To be honest with you, like this whole new movement I'm seeing of like nerdy black girls, I didn't see it back in the day. At least when I was in like elementary school, middle school, and maybe like I'll even admit maybe I had a blind spot. But like all these girls who are now like interested in Dragon Ball Z and Pokemon and all that stuff, I don't remember that in my experience, right? So yeah, we just like other guys, we just wanted the prettiest girl. Point blank period. It wasn't about her status, it was just about the fact that she was pretty. In my case, I ended up and I tell this story, I ended up dating my senior of high school, I ended up dating the girl that I had wanted since 7th grade. And I think a lot of my disposition towards women now and the fact that I humanize them now is like I early on did not humanize women. Like I thought she was like God
Please.
took the day off and he made her separately and he just dropped her gracefully. And then I got close enough to her to know that that's not true. Like that's not true. And I always encourage every guy, maybe not to have that same experience, but to make those same considerations. Like everything that glitters is not gold. Sometimes it's glittering because it's toxic, it's acidic, right? And that I think that was my what people would call my red pilling is realizing that this person that I pedestalized and I'd come up with all these delusions of grandeur as to who she wasn't really the case. But yeah.
So I'm curious, is it and I'm basing this off of what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing. The assumption is the nerdy kid was a good guy because he wasn't getting any play in high school and college. Now he has become successful. And so the women that he did want, now that they're quote unquote run through, want a good guy now. And they usually pan to the nerdy kid. Why is that the perception that automatically, because he's nerdy, that he's good? Because I mean, I don't know this I don't think it's true for Black nerdy kids. But if you think about the school shootings, isn't it by the kids that are being bullied because they're nerdy? I mean, 5 months after I moved to the United States, Columbine happened. And I remember thinking, where did I move to? So I'm curious, is that just the perception that all nerdy kids are automatically good?
I can't speak to white people
Right.
because I think white people are a completely different beast.
Right.
So I would just keep this in the black realm. I think, and I've been called purple pill for this stance, but the same lack of self-awareness and the same entitlement that we hear a lot of men complain that women have, a lot of men have as well. And nobody has ever actually snatched them up and said, you didn't qualify for her back then. Right? Like there's this, there's this expectation that if I'm nice to a girl, if I buy her 2.5 flowers and take her on 3.5 days, she's supposed to do X, Y, and Z. The reality is that people don't work like that, and women in particular don't work like that, right? Like, what's the saying? Men fall in love with what they see, women fall in love with what they hear, right? A lot of men, unfortunately, and I'm not saying it's necessarily their fault, but unfortunately, they didn't get that part of the game. So they have those expectations of the girls in middle school, the girls in high school, to want them or to have acknowledged them or to have prioritized them because they were quote unquote nice, without realizing that that goes against women's pathology. Like, women don't care about nice, they care about survival. And the indicators of survival are some of these superficial things that we're mature enough now to say that are childish and are a baseless way of comparing people. But in middle school and high school, that's kind of what it is. Nigga who got bitches because he was 6 foot. He was the captain of the football team. Like, that's how it is. And I encourage men to get to the point where they can look back on their failures and acknowledge the fact that that's what they deserved. But unfortunately, I think some of the people that we see remain in this red pill rage stage are the ones who felt a sense of entitlement. And I think part of that is like Hollywood, right? Like, you're supposed to treat a lot of that is also like a resentment towards their mothers. Because unfortunately, as a father, I'm gonna tell my boy, like, nah, bro, like, being nice to her is not how you get her. But unfortunately, their moms are like in their 30s and in their 40s and are grooming them to be a perfect boy for a 30 and 40-year-old woman who's calmed down and who actually understands value. But it doesn't work on the 16-year-old. It doesn't work on the 15-year-old girl she just got titties, she's getting DM'd by everybody. But nobody ever tells them that. So that resentment that is really towards their mother and really towards their situation, it now gets bubbled out towards women in general. Like, women should have been more, when the reality is, no, they shouldn't have. They're in line with how they're supposed to be. Now, with all that being said, women should still get to the point of maturity of understanding that gravity and age is going to take away all these goodies that I have. So I need to be a bit more intelligent with how and who I give it to, which I think then begs a different conversation. But yeah, I think the nerds who glowed up and who actually like had the self-awareness can now look back and say that, nah, I wouldn't have known what to do with her at 16. That's the reality. Not necessarily saying that I should take her with open arms now at 30 when she's got 5 kids, but the reality is, like, I didn't qualify for her at 16, just like she doesn't qualify for me now.
So, and I think a lot of what's happening now is reactionary, right? Mm-hmm. So we look at the worst case scenario in a lot of situations. Like you said, the 30-year-old that has 5 kids versus a 30-year-old who doesn't have kids. I think the reason why, and I don't subscribe to this, but I think that the reason why women in their 30s are saying that they want the reformed thugs is because our experience is a lot of men want Mother Teresa that's also a stripper. So as a man, you evolve into that by growing up and maturing and aging. Typically, that evolution typically happens for some women too, where maybe there were this quote unquote bad girl that became a good girl or calmed down, but that also comes with age. So at what point do we meet each other in the middle where we're giving each other grace because we're both kind of asking for similar things, but women are supposed to have all of that in their early 20s because that's when they're the most desirable. But it's okay that men take their time to get there.
Yeah. Once again, it's not fair.
That's the answer again.
Listen, it's not fair. I'm sure there are a lot of guys who would trade whatever they've been. I'm not gonna say a lot. There's some guys who would trade whatever status they've been able to achieve now in their 40s to be quote unquote that guy in high school. I'm sure there are a larger number of men who are quote unquote that guy in high school who now work at their local factory who would trade all that to be that guy at 40. The reality is life's not fair. The reality is some people, just like we talk about, some people mature early, some people, some people's time doesn't necessarily come when they would want it. I think the challenge for women in particular is women have to be a bit more considerate with their youth, since youth is such a big part of women's curriculum. Youth isn't a big part of men's curriculum because everything that men are evaluated on gets better with age. Money, you get more money as you get older. Wisdom, you get wiser as you get older. Even the masculine, regal disposition, it comes with beards, it comes with age. So one of the unfortunate advantages that older men have compared to older women is like society is deeming you more valuable, whereas it deemed her more valuable when you weren't valuable, right? Like young men are only good to be disposed of at war. Young women are supple, their breasts are supple, and their skin is tight and all that good stuff. They can born a lot. They can give you a lot of sons, a lot of daughters, and the whole nine. So I think it's in that intermediary time, like I would say, like between 25 and 35, where men and women can have that equitable conversation of, you're not at your peak yet, man, but I know you're going in that direction. And you're out of your peak, woman, but you're still in a good spot. Because anything outside of that, it gets really, really difficult because you're dealing with people with an immense amount of baggage. Just like we alluded to before, like as a man, it would be a challenge to, be with a woman who had been previously married. As a woman, it's going to be a challenge being with a man. I mean, it's the reality. As a woman, it'll be even the example you gave, the guy who was married 15 years. Like, one of the things that comes along with that is like he's not gonna want to jump in another marriage. Like he's been looking at all these women that he couldn't touch or do nothing with for 15 years, and then you understand male pathology, male psychology, male physiology. Hell yeah, he's gonna want to be he's probably a great dude, probably a wonderful dude. Maybe in the next 5-10 years he might be ready to spin the block or do something again, but like, nah, he's, so it's one of those like give and take things that you have to do as a man and as a woman. I will say this, I think, unfortunately though, the prevailing social narrative, and I think it has a lot to do with like theater, movies and shit, is that you don't have to make those accommodations. You don't have to make those considerations. I got out of my first marriage and I met my next husband 2 weeks later. That type of shit is what they make movies about. Not the reality of your situation, the reality of, it's not the kid who was popular in high school who's still popular now. No, it's the kid that everybody overlooked. No, it's not the girl who looked good in high school who still look. The girls who look good in my high school, they look like shit now. And the girls that we probably didn't see, they're the baddies now. What did Mufasa say? The circle of life. The circle of life. Circle of clout. Circle of shine. It comes with it. And it's not something that I think we need to fight against or be angry at. It's something we need to acknowledge, understand, and, finesse.
see what else I have on here.
What
Oh,
else you got? Let me read the super chat by Afro Disciple. He says, "It's not entitlement, it's response to being lied to. Men are good at following the rules if they stay consistent. The goalpost was always moving." And I agree. And, even when he says being lied to, I understand that more so culturally than interpersonally, because the reality is, as a culture, we lied to boys. We told boys that if you're nice and if you're kind and if you're sweet, that you'll have good outcomes. The world does not reward men for being nice, kind, or sweet. That's the reality. So we're receiving these conflicting messages, and unfortunately, some men never get to the point where they can kind of call a spade and be like, you know what, that's true. They still are tethered to those expectations, and they're now angry at the world for never rewarding them for being those things, instead of acknowledging that the world doesn't reward anybody for being those things.
so I know you like using the football analogy of Cam Newton's career versus Tom Brady's for women, where it's better to be chosen in the, what was it, the 97th round or whatever round he was chosen
Yeah.
for longevity purposes. It's a two-part question. Can that analogy be used for the quote unquote nerdy kid, nerdy black kid, that had to wait to grow into whatever, if it's his confidence, his looks, his success, to be able to have access to the kind of woman that he wanted when he was in college? And then this second part to that question is, what are, I don't want to seem pessimistic, but again, it doesn't seem like the good girls, conservative girls, are being picked from what I'm seeing. Because we all want to be chosen, good or bad girls. And the reason why a lot of good girls may start looking like the city girls or bad girls is because we understand aesthetically men are attracted to the exterior. So it's like, yeah, we're focusing too much on getting picked but not retention. But what can we do instead if we look too much like the city girl, so we're not getting picked regardless? Does that make sense?
I'm gonna answer based on what I think you're asking.
Okay.
Kind of like we said. I've said it. Philosophical has said it. A bunch of other dudes have said it. The hoes look too similar to the good girls. The good girls look too much like the hoes, and I think that's a consequence of the culture. I think the things that we're celebrating now as a culture, and I think more specifically women, are things that are counterproductive for women, right? I think this whole female empowerment is going too far. I think also because females are socialized to be more communal, women tend to not challenge the status quo, right? Like I've interviewed women, and they would say, like, when I would ask them, why didn't you call your friend out, or why didn't you hold her accountable, or whatever the case may be, they'll say, well, we would have probably gotten into a fight and fell out, right? Like, men can squabble and move forward. Women tend to not have that ability. Women tend to hold grudges and all kinds of stuff. So I think because of that, women generally have accepted those aesthetics and even try to make sense of them, even if it's not something that she personally subscribes to. I would say, again, focus on the outcomes that you want, because the reality is these BBL having IG models, they're not getting wifed up either, right? So simply having that isn't going to get you the outcome that you want. For some women, the outcome that they want is just to be the sexiest thing on Instagram, just to have the notoriety, just to be able to homie hop or rapper hop or athlete hop, and that's cool. But if you're a woman who's saying, I want a certain outcome, then at some point, yeah, you might have to put on the same costume. And when I say costume, I mean like makeup and hair and, you know, to attract the guy. But also you should be cognizant of what type of guy are you trying to attract, right? If you're trying to attract the same guy that the IG models are trying to attract, you might want to reevaluate things. So once you decide on the type of guy that you're trying to attract, and then you do what's necessary to attract him, all your energy should be on retention. And that's where my whole idea of Tom Brady versus Cam Newton, it's a shame that more women do not listen or seek out or keep up with or admire Savannah James. The women that women tend to follow, especially in a contemporary sense in our culture, are the Ari Lennoxes and the Jada Waitas, women who are only famous for being the rapper baby mamas, right? But the women who've been able to actually sustain relationships with men of, let me use a Nigerian term, men of timber and caliber. Women seem to not care about what they have to say, right? A couple months ago, a lot of women were put off by Michelle Obama, for saying that for about 10 years of her marriage, she didn't really like Barack.
Oh.
Because again, so many women are sold this fairy tale of, if it ain't this, this, and this, if it ain't a fairy tale, I don't want it. When the reality of people who are doing the thing that you claim to want to do is not a pretty one. But you want all the things, all the good things that come with being LeBron James's wife or being Barack Obama's wife, but you want none of the sacrifice. You want none of the challenges and everything like that. And so they keep themselves in this cycle of simpleton men, because they know in those situations they have control, right? So I think for a woman who's actually serious, she needs to just evaluate what is it that she wants, why is it that she wants it, where does she need to be to get it, and the attraction part, it's not going to be tough. But then just focus all her energy on, okay, I've gotten this man that I want, this man that might not be the immediate first choice for this IG model. How do I keep him? And it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be pretty. I wish it was, but it's not. But
As far as retention, is that why, and I hate this question, is that why men ask the question of what you bring to the table to assess whether or not you have the ability to retain or keep that relationship going with them?
So I was never really a fan of the "what do you bring to the table" question, but I understand why men ask it. The reason men ask it is because in a contemporary sense, Men are required by the female delegation to be a lot of things. And while more things are being added to that list, things are systematically being taken away from women's requirements. Like there's a question that I asked some of my interviewees. I say, are men today better than their grandfathers based on what women are asking for? Some women say no. Most women say yes. And then I ask, are women today better than their grandmothers based on what men are asking for? Most men would say no. But again, the kind of popular sense is that you're supposed to take me as I am. You're supposed to love me as I am. I am enough. It doesn't matter if you think I'm valuable. I think I'm valuable. And then the response to the what do you bring to the table is I am the table. But I think the underlying thing is how dare you question my worth in your life? You're supposed to assume that I'm worthy, which is tough for men, especially black men, who have to fight against the assumption that we are nefarious and we're unworthy. Most men are starting off from having to prove that they are a good person. I think generally to society, because black men have been branded a certain way, but especially to our women. So I think maybe in an unsophisticated way, men are just saying that for everything you're expecting me to be, for you, what are you willing to be for me? And step one requires you to even sit with a consideration of what is it that men want. Most women never think about that. And the reason, like I said earlier, the reason Kevin Samuels was so polarizing, bless you.
Thank you.
The reason he was so polarizing was he was the first time for a lot of men, even some married men, that they saw a man have the audacity to set a standard for women publicly and then hold women to that standard and hold women to the light. Oh, you're 5'4", you're 300 pounds? You weigh more than every man your height. But you expect a man who's a top 1% dude? It doesn't make sense. So I think, again, that whole what do you bring to the table thing, like men weren't really asking, well, I bring a car and I bring a job. Nah. Men were asking, have you considered what men want? Have you considered what would be complementary for all the things you're expecting from me? And unfortunately, most women have not.
Okay. And I think that's where a lot of us go wrong when it comes to dating, because you're supposed to be collecting data in terms of who is sitting across from you. But it just becomes so transactional seemingly when the first question you ask is what do I bring, what you bring to the table. And for me, it's insulting because, and I could be wrong, I don't think non-Black women hear that question.
They don't. They probably don't.
Okay. So I think that's where I get offended when that question is asked, because I understand what you're trying to ascertain is whether or not you're the kind of woman I want to be in my company. There are other ways of finding that out, like ask me where I'm from, what I like to do for fun, what's my perfect day off, etc. Like, no, not what.
Have you ever listened to men talk about their horror stories with women, like dating women? Maybe a male friend or podcasts, TV shows.
I hear a lot of the extreme examples, and there's a specific archetype of those women that these men have been talking or express their horror stories about,
Mm-hmm.
seemingly.
Mm-hmm. I can agree with that. I think generally though, women don't realize the level of entitlement that most men are met with.
Expressing, yeah.
Yes, outside.
Mhm.
And I think I say that to say that even this, what do you bring to the table, is less than 5 years old. This is just a glimpse of what the bulk of men have experienced for a for decades, right? And I'm not saying it's right or you should endure it, but I'm hoping it inspires women who actually want men and actually see the value in men to take a step back and consider some of the experiences of men and consider male pathology. Because again, I think part of the problem is that we are socialized to view men as simpletons. We're socialized to think men are no better than what they can do for me and how good they make me feel, and all I have to do in return is have sex with them, right? Like even consider how we look at Mother's Day versus Father's Day. Mother's Day, we need to get her a spa date, or we need to take her on a trip, or we need to get a nice, thoughtful gift. Father's Day, we need to buy him a tool, or a tie, or a sock. Like we're not socialized to see men as people. We see men as tools. We see men as, and I'm not saying it's necessarily women's fault because we don't do a good enough job as men portraying ourselves as people, because every part of masculinity is about being Superman, right? It's being impervious to pain, being willing to sacrifice yourself for the greater good or for whatever. So I think there's a lot more unpacking that needs to happen, but I think what I would like to see from the female delegation is an opportunity, or this provides an opportunity for women to start viewing or considering the world from a male perspective. What is it like as a man to date me? And that means not just my good, because that's cool, but like my bad, like my quirks, my the things that are annoying as fuck about me, the things that if I was a dude would like piss me off and not want or make me not want to spend time with you. That's why I recommend women who really want to understand men. It's gonna hurt, but go listen to Patrice O'Neal. That's the comedic side. If you want to get academic, Dr. Tia Johnson, Dr. Tommy Curry, right? These are men who are trying to formalize the study of black men, because there are a lot of nuances that we see with men, especially black men, that get dismissed as toxic or childish or whatever the case may be, but it comes from a really deep place. But there's not that sense of curiosity, unfortunately, from the female delegation to really unpack that and get to the nuts and bolts of it. Because the reality is, in order for us to get what we want from you, we have to understand you. If I want to get pussy, I have to at least have maybe not even a deep one, but a working understanding of female pathology. Oh, she wants me to say this at this point. She wants me to do this at this point. She wants me to look like this. Boom, boom. Men constantly, even the whole manosphere, it started with pickup artistry. Men constantly have to study women because a lot of our self-esteem and a lot of our social status is intrinsically tied to our ability to woo women, our ability to be attractive to the largest number of women. On the flip side, women don't necessarily have that same pressure, especially beautiful women, because they just have to sit back and accept what comes. So I think what could set women who are serious apart is gaining that deep, nuanced understanding of who men actually are. And you're not gonna like some of it. I'm gonna be honest with you. Some of it you're gonna be like, God damn, men are horrible people. But I don't like some of the shit about women, but I have to take the good with the bad.
Hmm. So I'm conflicted because, and it could just be because of where I live.
Hmm. Yeah, Atlanta's horrible. Atlanta's horrible.
It could just be
And
that.
some of my subscribers are in Atlanta, and I have to tell them, no offense to you, but Atlanta's trash. I don't like it.
My From my vantage point, it doesn't seem to be the case now where men are putting in any kind of effort, though. So the studying what women want to even get close to them or to even get the cookie from the cookie jar,
Mm.
there's nothing being um, there's no pursuit.
Why do you think that is?
Because of the sexual liberation, women just giving it away, thinking that that's going to guarantee them attention from the man that they want. Um, it's seemingly
Mm.
not something that men or women feel is sacred anymore.
I'll take it a step further. I think even though, and again, my subscribers know this, even though I was never really like a super fan of Passport Bros, I definitely was not a fan of Save Yourself Black Man. I think, or I wish, black women had engaged in that conversation more earnestly. I wish black women had asked the question, where are these men going and why? I wish black women's reflex was not to simply insult and dismiss these men, but to self-reflect. Because again, whether I say it, whether anybody else says it, we have to deal with the fact that no other man globally is running to America to find a wife. It was coming to America, and that was about it. And he only did that because he was confused. He thought Queens meant that's where Queens live. But the reality is, not the African man, not the Asian man, not the European man. No man globally is running to the United States to find a wife. You can extrapolate that out, unless they want papers. You can extrapolate that out and say the West, so the UK. So the popular narrative is because men are used to being dominant over their women, and the Western woman is liberated, and you can't dominate us, you can't tell us what to do, so only weak men are staying away from us. And sure. But at the end of the day, if you want a man, I think as a woman, you need to engage in why that is. You need to engage in why, even though Western women are more open to having sex and being sexual, Eastern women are where the men are going. Because the thing is, and I was talking about this the other day because I went to the Explore page, which is a mistake for a young man trying to get his life together. And you see these women now, the Explore page is showing me South African women. And it's like, still, we're not seeing a huge funnel of men going there to find wives. So we need to start putting these things on the table. Okay, ass gets you X amount of points, face gets you X amount of points, titties gets you X amount of points, sex appeal gets you X amount of points, fit, feminine, friendly gets you X amount of points. And I think, unfortunately, what I'm seeing happen is a lot of women are unwilling to even engage in that analysis because they're not willing to dismantle themselves and humble themselves. And therefore, because of their poor understanding, they're over-indexing on the thing that they think men should value and ignoring what men actually value. So, you're in the gym and your coach is saying, oh, Elsie, you've done enough legs. You need to work your upper body. Your legs are strong enough. You need to work your upper body. You can barely do 2 push-ups. And then he come in the gym the next day and you over there doing squats. He come in the day after, you over there doing deadlifts. And you're like, well, fuck my arms. I care about my legs. And you should care about my legs too. So I think what would help is if women understood that men are the consumers of their womanness, just like women are the consumers of their manness. And I see more so men bending themselves to the whims of women, and women are getting further and further away from even engaging with what men want. At the very least, or at the best, they'll engage with what Chris Brown wants or Michael B. Jordan, like those men who are way out of their league, those men who are plastered on our TV. Oh, I want to be sexy for Future. Well, you'll never meet him, or even if you do, the best you'll get is his dick. And then get mad at the 90% of men who are just saying, I want a good woman who I'm happy to come home to every day. Right? So that's what I wish came out of these sometimes abrasive conversations on the internet, like women taking a step back and self-reflecting, okay. Because the thing that I've been saying too is like, the passport bros on the internet care. It's counterintuitive as hell, but they care. Because I know real passport bros. But one of my boys right now, he probably is still in Colombia. He don't say shit. He gets bitches here too, but those are the ones that you need to be careful of. The ones who don't talk about it, they don't even know the term passport bro. But like when it's time for them to decide who they're going to take care of for the rest of their life, they're not looking at you. So I want to see some of these conversations kind of evolve and get away from just stroking our egos or keeping ourselves comfortable and engaging with the realities of what we want and who we need to become to get what we want. And I think as a black man, it's particularly frustrating because we see our women bend and contort themselves in all kinds of ways to submit to corporate America. But for whatever reason, or to submit to academia, but for whatever reason, you don't see enough value in us to even consider what it is that we're saying we want you to be for us. But we're still expected to potentially risk our lives protecting or providing. I know you got more questions.
I was trying to ruminate on what you just said. Let's see.
Take your time. I'll give you like 2 more and then we'll...
Two more. Okay, let's see.
We'll wrap up. Because we've been going for 3 hours. I don't know if you've realized it. I do this, so I understand it's sweets. The conversation is sweet, but we gotta sleep.
Right. Let's see. I think we actually answered my question in conversation somehow. Well, hold please. Ooh. I think this is a good one to close out.
Give it to me.
So the notion that nice guys finish last. Is it possible that nice girls or good girls finish last too?
I never liked nice guys finish last because I don't think it's true.
I agree.
Yeah, I don't think it's true. And the reason I don't think it's true is like a lot of quote unquote nice people think that relationships are transactional. So, like I alluded to earlier, if I take you on X amount of dates and I buy you X amount of flowers and I do X amount of things, you're supposed to dot, 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 dot. So there's that baked in entitlement. And I think women sense that. And I think that's what's off putting about quote unquote nice men. That, along with the fact that if you're going to lead me, like I remember a couple of months ago, I said women are built to challenge men. And if I had to refine that, I would say women are built to stress test men. If you're going to lead me, I am going to, whether consciously or unconsciously, create a curriculum for you, right? And a test for you. Even in tech, you know, we might code some shit or build some shit, but then we have to test it. Does it work in this scenario, that scenario? And women, I think, innately understand this. If I'm going to put my life in this man's hands, at the very least, he should be able to stand up to me. At the very least, he should be able to navigate, tolerate my bullshit.
That sounds
right?
terrible.
Listen, and that's what I've tried to introduce to this conversation. There are no simple, clean cut answers. We are messy. Humanity is we're walking contradictions, right? So with all that being said, like, nice is not something that's going to be attractive to 99.9% of women. Women are looking for a kind man. Women are looking for a man who is going to not just protect me from the world, but also protect me from myself. A yes man can't protect you from yourself. A man who is overly enamored by you might not be able to identify or call out some of your self-destructive or counterproductive behaviors. So I can't respect him because he's not seeing me, he's seeing my representative, or he's seeing his idealized version of me. Right? And that's why good guys don't do well with women. Guys get put in the friend zone because women want, and again, this is one of those counterintuitive things that I had to learn. Women want to be loved dirty. Loved dirty. What I mean by that is, there's a song by Ella Mai. It's called Love Me. I think it's called Love Me Naked, but she talks about like she wants a man to love her for her and things like that, and not the representative that she sends out into the world with makeup and with the hair and with the outfits and things like that. Like I ask women, for instance, let's say you have two men. One man, you are, he doesn't know any of your dirt. You are lying to. You are keeping a certain facade for him going. And then another man, he knows all your secrets. He knows the deep, dirty corners of you and your heart and your brain and your pathology and your eroticism and the whole nine. And you're completely honest and 100% with that guy. Of those two men, who do you love more? You can answer it if you like. And then I'll tell you what other women said.
So I did both with my ex-husband. I'm being honest.
When did you feel the most free, protected, at ease?
I didn't. Yeah.
Explain. What do you mean by that?
So I guess the representative of me, right?
Mm-hmm.
that was easier to keep up because we were long distance first. So when we moved in together, went to lived in the same home, a lot of things start kind of, automatically coming to the forefront. For example, him seeing my natural hair and his reaction from when I went from my natural hair to getting a sew-in like 3 4 months later, because I was trying to save money. I knew uh, from moving from state to state, it was going to put a huge detriment financially. So to cut costs, there are certain things that I didn't do with my upkeep that was easier when we were long distance, like my nails, my hair, makeup, um, stuff like that. So, and I had even asked him, how would you feel seeing me with my natural hair? And his response was welcome. I thought it was great. I'm like, okay, cool. So that was me getting more comfortable, seeing the not so pleasant part of me personally. That's why I felt at the time, because it was still a new wave of a lot of Black women wearing their natural hair out. So I was getting a lot of feedback, positive feedback from, you guessed it, white people. None from him. His sister made a comment, thought it was really nice. His mom made comments here and there. The moment I was able to afford comfortably a sew-in for my birthday, oh, you look pretty again. So I'm thinking,
What was he Ghanaian?
no, he was African American. Yeah.
I think with the hair thing, it's a bit more complex because it takes a certain level of consciousness to have an appreciation of that. White people appreciating, and that's just novelty, and that's just like fetishization. So it's not the same as him. But the vast majority of women, when they talk about wanting to feel protected, they're also talking about permission to be themselves. Right? So I imagine you didn't feel protected.
I didn't.
You didn't feel safe to be you.
Nope.
Even in your relationship. So like the answer to that question, let's say you had a side dude who loved your natural hair. Let's say he loved you naked, like as the song goes, you would have loved him more. That's opposite for men. But again, it goes back to some of those counterintuitive truths that differentiates men from women, and I'm trying to encourage men to understand some of those from a female perspective, and encourage women to understand some of those from a male perspective as well.
Wait, so you're saying men lie?
So to use that same analogy, guy has two women. One he lies to, one he tells the truth.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the one he loves more is the one he lies to. Unfortunately, because again, we don't view safety the same way. So like to bring it back to the whole nice guy thing, since the nice guy is in love with his idealized version of you, you can never feel safe with him because you know that's not you. You know that weave that he thinks is your hair isn't actually your hair. The makeup that he thinks is your skin isn't actually your skin. And there is because at women's core, and again, this is one of those counterintuitive things, at women's core, they're pleasers. And I think intuitively, you know you can never please him, you can only disappoint him, because you can never live up to his expectation of you, right? Now, with nice girls, I think it's a bit different.
Really?
I think it's I think it's a bit different. Like I think a perfect example is like what's Derek Jackson's wife's ex-wife's name?
Danae.
What is it?
Danae.
Danae. Yeah. She's just awkward, and she
But
and I
that's
think
how a lot of nerdy girls are growing
and
up.
it's a disadvantage, unfortunately. Like we have to call a spade a spade. So either you improve your social skills or you find a guy who appreciates it. But I think also the thing with Danae is like she just wasn't with a good dude.
Right.
Point blank. Period. First and foremost, the nigga's a con artist.
Mhm.
But on top of that, she was seemingly one dimensional. And as he grew and as he got access and status, he didn't think he could, it probably didn't think he could share that with her because she was just a helmet of salvation. God is this type of person. So men aren't looking for women to be as dynamic as women are looking for men to be. But we still like some range. We still like, just like we say, lady in the streets, freak in the sheets, we still like a little bit of range.
Hold up. You don't think women are asked to be more dynamic?
Not as much as men are. Not as much as men are. I think the most is like freak in the sheets, lady in the streets, freak in the sheets. And I think, but I think men are a bit more honest with what we want long term versus short term. And I don't know if we're honest enough with y'all as to what the difference is, because I don't think we always know what the difference is, especially when we're young, right? But 20-something-year-old dudes aren't trying to get married. Like you'll see women even complain, why do men always marry the plain Janes? There's a reason for that, right? So again, it really boils down to what outcome do you want as a woman? Because that's going to dictate the type of man that you should go after, the type of men that are available to you, and the timeline that you have to get it done as efficiently as possible.
So basically, move.
Yeah, Atlanta. I don't know. Because my problem with Atlanta is not just the traffic, but the people seem very pretentious. Like there's an air, and I'm saying this as a Nigerian, probably one of the most pretentious group of people
You said it, I didn't.
in the world. No, I'm honest about it. Nigerians are pretentious as shit. So I'm very sensitive. You talked about sensitive. I'm very sensitive to pretentiousness. I like people who are humble, who are down to earth. But Nigerians are definitely not that. Atlanteans are definitely like that. Like everybody is trying to be. It's Black Hollywood, right? So like for me personally, it doesn't mesh well with my personality type, So yeah, but yeah, you might want to go to Mississippi or something. South Carolina, North Carolina, I don't know, but Atlanta,
Well, it was not on my list of places to move to after my divorce. I had to take care of my mom, and I just hadn't had the opportunity or the means to leave yet. But on top of that, the only family that I have left in the United States is in Atlanta, besides my sister and her husband that live in Florida. So it's kind of like, what, should I really be leaving right now?
Right. Well, I want to appreciate you, LC. I got to do a round of applause for you. Thank you so much, LC. This was, in my opinion, my very humble opinion, this was a very productive conversation. Was it for you? I feel like I learned a lot. You?
Yeah. I think a lot of what you said, I've heard before. I'm just hearing it differently now.
I try to, because again, like none of what I'm saying is original. None of what a lot of people are saying is original. I think delivery is where I try to differentiate what I'm offering, I guess. But at the end of the day, it really just comes down to self-awareness and humility. That's it. That's it. And my biggest thing is like, we're not each other's enemy as black men, as black women. The real enemy is Caucasian. And they've tricked us into thinking we're each other's enemies. So I'm trying to direct the conversation from a place of like an antagonistic posture to like solidarity to face the actual problem. And I think even just the optics of black man over here, black woman over there, they're having a cordial, respectful conversation. I think that speaks volumes. So thank you. I appreciate you.
My pleasure.
But yeah, maybe we'll do this again. But I appreciate you hung in there for 3 hours and 25 minutes. So I'm gonna give you another round of applause. It is not easy to do. If you guys are interested in Elsie, if you fit some of those God-fearing and those good and decent and kind, characteristics that she's looking for, slide in them DMs. Her Instagram is _ELSIEF. And, or just slide and say thank you. I think it's important men gain more insight into the pathology of black women, and black women gain more insight into the pathology of black men. So again, Elsie, thank you so much. And have a good night, okay?
Thank you, and thank you for giving me the space and platform to speak my piece. And that
Anytime.
not all of us are the same. We might be similar in some ways, but we are more nuanced than we give each other credit for. So.
Nuance is my favorite word. So again, I appreciate you. Have a good night.
You too.
All right. Peace. All right, y'all. We have the hell? I think my Alexa was just talking to me. We've reached the end of this stream. Thank y'all so much for hanging out with us. I know it was impromptu, but I think at the core of what I'm trying to accomplish is this. I want to continue to engage with our women, and I say that deliberately, our women, black women are our women, in productive dialogue. I think, even with the issues or the qualms that we have with one another, I think our relationship is salvageable. And whatever little part I can do, I will continue to do so. But again, thank y'all for hanging out. Thank y'all for the super chats. Thank y'all for the support. Everybody who became a member, welcome. Go check out some of the content. Tomorrow, the full version of my conversation with Nathan is premiering. Y'all go check that out. It was hard to edit, so please show it some love. But appreciate y'all, and yeah, I'll see y'all soon. Peace.